Welcome. Hopefully I am live now. I was having some issues just now and it's never actually happened to me. So you would think with all the experience I've had over the months that I would actually get the hang of it. But let me know if you can hear me. I've been having a few difficulties. I think it's because of the new stream key. So my apologies for that. But yeah, as always, get your comments and all your questions down in the live chat and we'll be going through them. I'll be talking about my team and the changes. But yeah, for some reason, I don't know, the chat wasn't working and the stream wasn't working. So hopefully it starts to work now. I think it should be fine now, but yeah, let me know in the chat. Apologies for that. I was talking for the last 5 minutes about my team and I was answering the question by Bacon and then, yeah, I mean, it just, yeah, it hasn't worked, so I just don't even know what happened there. But there we go, a bit of rustiness. I did do some streams over the summer with the Euros, but this is the first time with FPL, and I've kind of changed some settings there, so that's probably the cause of the issue. But good to see everyone here. Really appreciate all the support. And I'll just go through all your questions first and then talk about some of the kind of issues I have with my own team and some of my thought processes at the moment, because, you know, I've been kind of trying to finalize a team and settle on it, but still haven't as of yet. Bacon says, I'm not sure about Rafinha. I'm panicking and I'm scared to watch Arsenal. To be honest, I think most people are scared of watching Arsenal nowadays, when with good reason. And yeah, with the kind of news about Aubameyang and Lacazette, yeah, I don't really have any confidence there whatsoever. And as for Rafinha, yeah, I can understand why you're not so sure, but I think medium to long term, he's a very good pick. But you can go without him for the first few game weeks. I think that's why, at the moment anyway, I haven't gone with him. I've gone with the likes of Barnes and Greenwood instead. But yeah, I think you can go without Rafinha. I think there's no issue with that. Let me try and get this up. But yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, the kind of live chat and all of that was not working properly, but should be all fine now. Here's to a new season, says Ty. Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to get going, to be honest, more than anything. And just like that, it's time again. Hello, Dylan. Hope you're well. Thank you, Mickey. And really appreciate you tuning in once again. And yeah, I just want to get it started, as I said before. Welcome, Pereira. Thank you for joining in. Guys, do you all think Havertz is in the starting 11, says Fazil? I think so, to be honest, especially with Lukaku not starting in game week 1, which was confirmed by Tuchel today in the press conference. Yeah, I think yeah, he should be starting, no doubt about that, and even in that advanced position potentially. Welcome, Sharan. Thank you for joining in. Thank you, Ty, once again, and hopefully you're well too. Hey, Dylan, best of luck for the new season. Thank you, Adi. You too. And hopefully you have a very good and enjoyable season more than anything. Would you start with Rafinha or Benrahma? To start the season, I'd probably say Benrahma, but that's only kind of looking at it from a short-term point of view and looking at fixtures. But medium to long-term, I think Rafinha's the superior pick. He's going to be more nailed. He's got set pieces as well. So does Benrahma, but I think Rafinha's a bit more consistent in that regard. Two differences. I've gone for Gundogan instead of Barnes and a 4 million thoughts on going for Che Adams. Yeah, not for me with Che Adams, to be honest. With Southampton, I'm probably going to be avoiding all of their assets for the time being. But yeah, with Che Adams, I just think there's better options elsewhere. Muchas gracias, aficiones de vosotros. Sí. Welcome, Antonio. Thank you for joining in. What about Bamford? Yeah, I like Bamford actually. Despite the really poor fixtures at the beginning, I think he's still probably the best 8 million option. But there is Ings as well. Calvert-Lewin is available. But I don't know, there's so much uncertainty with Everton with the kind of 5 players isolating, including James Rodriguez. And then you look at Danny Ings, he's injury prone. But yeah, I like Bamford, but just for the first few game weeks, I think you can do without him, just like with Rafinha, for example. And thank you all the questions coming in and everything, really appreciate it. And you know, if you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll just be getting right onto it yet again. But yeah, I'll be going through all your questions. I'll be talking about my team, and to be honest, I'm not even fully settled on it, but I'll probably just be letting things happen as they are. And remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I post content there too, and you can just talk to me on those platforms, Dylan_RCM. And also remember to join the league. It's 886RGT. You can go on the description below, and there's an auto join link, or if not, you can copy that code and paste it onto the Fantasy Premier League website, and yeah, then you're part of the league pretty much. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the most chaotic and hectic part of the season all the time. You know, game week 1, it is what it is, but yeah, here we are. Grealish plus Sarr or Gundogan plus Rafinha, says Sanan. Good question. I'd probably say You know what? I'd probably say Gundogan and Rafinha. I just prefer that medium to long term than Grealish and Sarr. Anab says, "Hey Dylan, good luck for the season, man. Thank you very much, and you too. Hopefully you do really well and enjoy this season as always. I really appreciate that." Marco says, "Hey bro, how have you been doing? Haven't been engaged to YouTube for a while. Nice to see you again. Surprised to see reportedly no Alba or Laka. We don't trust them. Tempted on a mid punt to City mid game week 2. Yeah, thanks Marco for joining in once again, even in Euros, I believe." Yeah, even me, to be honest, I just haven't had any time really to be doing live streams and videos. But yeah, after the holidays, I'll hopefully be recharged and then be bringing out more content. And as for Aubameyang and Lacazette, it's kind of interesting, who's going to be coming in. I think Balogun actually got added to the game, and he's 5 million, so he could be a very good option for game week 1. But of course, not really ideal with game week 2 and 3, where he's probably not going to play anyway. And you look at the fixtures, are just awful. But could be a good budget option, I guess, if he starts. But yeah, good to see you again, Marco. Antonio says, "Mark my words, ladies and gents, Gundogan is expiring soon." Words from a City fan. Yeah, I mean, you did tell me that, actually back in the Community Shield, really. And a lot of people were liking his performance. He's getting into good positions, but, you don't really see it. And to be honest, he was quite sloppy in that game. Do you think 4 at the back is viable? Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't really kind of pay too much attention to formations. 4 at the back, 3 at the back, 5 at the back. It just depends on the fixtures, the players you have. But ultimately, I would aim to have 4 good defenders overall. I think that is key. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. Daniel says, "Start Soufal or Rafinha, mate." For a second, I kind of got PTSD. You said start, and I'm like, wait, did I not start the live stream? That would be kind of awful. Just to double check, let me play. Yeah, I think it's working. Start Soufal or Rafinha. Tough one. I'd probably start Soufal, but I think both of them are just as capable of blanking as each other and also of getting a haul. But I'd probably go for Soufal. I think he's slightly more likely, although I would expect Newcastle to score. And, I wouldn't be too surprised if Rafinha blanks, even if Leeds actually do score a goal. Suvam says Tsimikas plus Mahrez plus Benrahma, or White plus Jota plus Barnes for the next 2 to 3, or first 2 to 3 game weeks. A great question. Oof, I mean, that's really tough. I'd probably say the first set of players, because Mahrez plays Norwich in game week 2. If he's obviously going to be starting, then that's a fantastic option. Tsimikas should be good for 2 to 3 weeks. And Benrahma, I think he's another one who, for the short term, very, very good. Of course, over the long term, I would prefer the second trio, but, in the kind of first 2 to 3, definitely the first one. Ty says, "I've gone with Greenwood over Sancho to start the season, but after Ollie's press conference, I think he might start tomorrow, so I'm unsure what to do." Well, yeah, but just to remember, even if Sancho does start on the right-hand side, Greenwood could start up front, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. And you never know, it could be Sancho and Greenwood on the wings, although maybe that's a bit less likely. Martial isn't fully fit. Cavani has come back late from Copa America. He's still getting a little holiday, so there's a lot of players kind of in and out. Rashford's of course injured for quite a long time, so I do like Greenwood for the first few, but yeah, he is kind of risky in my opinion. As you've probably heard a lot, my team is exactly the same as yours, bar Rafinha over Tony, but I guess I ain't too confident of Tony not scoring versus us. He used to play for my local Peterborough, so like him. Yeah, I've heard about that, and he's been doing well, ever since the Championship really, and League One. So it's not kind of a fluke in my opinion with him. I think he could score today, and that's why I do have him in. I think for the first 5 game weeks at least, he could be a great option. 6.5 million on penalties, can rack up the bonus points. Yeah, I mean, I think Rafinha long term is a better pick than Tony. I would have more confidence in him anyway. But I like Tony for the beginning, and I think he's a safe pick in the end. Who's better, Mahrez or Gundogan? I prefer Mahrez, to be honest, for the first few game weeks. Although Gundogan was getting into good positions throughout pre-season and the Community Shield, I just prefer Mahrez. I think he's just sharper. I think he's more explosive, and I'm not too confident in Gundogan this season. I could be wrong about that, but I don't see him replicating his heroics from last season. Arnab says, "Quick thoughts on my team: Sanchez, Trent, Shaw, Target, Salah, Bruno, Grealish, Buendia, Pepe, Ings, Tony, bench Foster, Tsimikas, Amati, Obafemi." I mean, the thing with Amati, and the reason why I got rid of him, is because Vestergaard has actually completed a medical to Leicester City. And you know what, give me a second actually, for the background noise, apologies for that. Yeah, apologies for that. As I was saying, with Vestergaard going to Leicester City, I think that Amati's position is in jeopardy. So he might start in game week 1, but I'm just not so confident in game week 2, 3, and onwards. So that would kind of be an issue I'd highlight there. Obafemi is just a budget striker. Just bear in mind though that he could actually transfer away from Southampton. So just keep an eye on that situation. And then looking at the kind of rest of the team, let's see. Yeah, I think Grealish, he might start a lot of City in his price tag after all, but I'm not too confident about him. Buendia should be a good option for the first 3 game weeks, but then again, he's those kind of players who could have a very good game yet get no fantasy points. He's a playmaker, he can create a lot of chances. They might not be converted. The rest of the team though looks really good. Pepe's a very good punt for game week 1. But going into game weeks 2 and 3, I just wouldn't expect anything from him, to be honest. But I think if you're looking long term, Arsenal have some very good fixtures, so Pepe could actually be a decent pick in the end. But yeah, it's a good team. Cole says, my team is almost identical, only difference is Gundogan instead of Greenwood. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with Gundogan, I'm not too confident in him myself, but he is someone to consider still. And there's also Harvey Barnes, there's Rafinha, and also Jota, Mason Mount as well. There's quite a few options around 7, 6.5 and 7.5 million. Let's see. Same team, Barnes to Rafinha plus 0.5 million, that's fair enough. And actually having that kind of money, 0.5 million, gives you a bit of flexibility. So, there's nothing wrong with that. How much sure can I be that Tsimikas will start? Is he nailed in? I think he will start. Some people think it'll be Milner or someone else filling in, but I think it will be Tsimikas, at least for the first few game weeks. But when Robertson's back, just forget about it. Tsimikas will be on the bench yet again. Antonio going to get injured with his glass ankles, potentially Robin, but if he isn't, he's a very good option for the first 4 or 5 game weeks and even beyond that, to be honest. Tsimikas should play because of Robertson injury. Yeah, I agree, Jack. Which is the best Man City defensive asset? Assuming that everyone starts, I think it's Cancelo because of the attacking threat, but that's the problem. He's not guaranteed to start either on the left or right hand side. So I think, to be honest, in terms of safety, it would be Diaz. And if Stones can nail down a spot there for the majority of these games in the first half of the season, I'd probably just about edge towards Stones, even if he misses the occasional game or two. I just think he offers a bit more attacking threat and is cheaper than Diaz. But yeah, I'd say one of those 2 centre-backs is the best ones. Marcus says, main spots in my team up for grabs are my 4 mid-price midfielders, currently on Greenwood, Barnes and Rafinha, considering Gundogan, Benrahma, Torres and Saka plus Pepe as a 1-week punt, then transfer to City game week 2. That's fair enough. I mean, I'm not that kind of player who likes to have someone for 1 game week and then automatically look to transfer them out, especially when beginning of the season. So I get the appeal of having Pepe in game week 1, then moving him on. I was considering something similar with Havertz, then moving him on to Son in game week 2. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do myself, and I'm not saying you have to do this, is kind of just think medium to long term. And apart from maybe 1 or 2 players, which potentially that's what you're doing, just kind of have a stable team and not book in transfers early on. That's just my opinion on it. Is Target still first choice left back at Aston Villa? I think he is, but he's going to be rotated from time to time, and that's what kind of puts me off. I had him in one of my drafts, but I'm not so sure about him. Adi says Forster, Sanchez, Shaw, Trent, Diaz, Soufal, Andrew, Salah, Bruno, Barnes, Benrahma, Rafinha, Ings, Antonio, Tony plus 0.5. Any upgrades suggested? To be honest, in terms of upgrades, I'd probably move on that Norwich defender. I'd probably move him on to Tsimikas. But yeah, to be honest, long term, the Norwich defender will be playing most games. You can't say the same about Tsimikas, but I think for the first few game weeks at least, Tsimikas, at 4 million, you can't really turn down the opportunity, especially when you don't have a triple Liverpool, to be honest. So yeah, I'd probably just go for Tsimikas. How's it been, Dylan? Great to be back. Deeney or Sarr from Watford? I'd definitely say Sarr. I think he's nailed on that right-hand side. And with Deeney, he just might not even play. So definitely Sarr. And, things have been very good. Hopefully they have been with you too, Yamir. Hi, Dylan. How's it going, mate? What do you think about Lukaku? I'd forget about him for now, because Chelsea have some very poor fixtures all the way until game week 7. That's when I'd start considering him, maybe on a wild card. But when you look at game week 1, Lukaku's not starting, and that's the standout fixture for Chelsea in the opening 6 game weeks. So I'd probably say with Lukaku, forget about him for now. But going into the future, if you have Fernandes or Salah, you can maybe make 2 moves and get Lukaku in around game week 7. Do you think Woodman's a good option for Newcastle? Yeah, I think so. He's 4.5 million. He's going to be starting, but for how long, I'm not so sure. So it depends how early you wildcard. If you're looking to wildcard in Game Week 7 or beyond, I'm just not too sure about that. But I think Woodman is a good option at 4.5 million. It's just a shame he's not 4 million. Otherwise, he'd definitely be in my squad. But yeah, I think at 4.5 million, though, there's still Backman and Robert Sanchez. So maybe if you have two 4.5 million keepers, that's fine. But I just wouldn't go for him over Sanchez or Backman, at least personally. Who is a better backup keeper to Sanchez, Backman or Gaeta? I'd probably say Backman. With Palace, I don't think they're going to be as good defensively as they have been in previous seasons. And yeah, just the fixtures are pretty poor. And that's the kind of opposite with Watford. So I go for Backman. Also, my guts tell me to go with DCL, but with all the doubt, I'm sticking with Ings, Tony and Antonio. I'd always trust your gut instinct, but yeah, I think with all the doubts, I mean, who knows? Is it even confirmed that Luca Digne is one of those players who, are isolating? Who knows? I just know that Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are clear to play, but players like James Rodriguez are going to be missing out. So yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot of options this year. How do subs work in FPL? Is it the same as the Euros or different? Yeah, Jack, it's completely different. You can't make manual substitutions between each individual day within the game week. You can't do that. So basically what you have on your bench is final, and whoever doesn't start in your starting 11, they're going to be substituted out for those players in order. So as long as you have a viable formation. So in my case, let's say that Trent Alexander-Arnold, actually let me put a better example, Tsimikas, let's say he's going to be benched and he doesn't play at all, and let's say I had Brownhill as my first sub, that kind of substitution would be overlooked and it'd go to my second substitute or whoever I have as my defender, my first defender on my bench, and they would come on. But basically it's going to be the order of your bench. It's very important to have it in order, and if not, it will be in terms of positions and being able to fill out a viable formation. And let me actually discuss my team quickly before going back to all your questions. I realise there's quite a lot of comments and I'll try to get to all of them at some stage. But this is my team. I want your thoughts as well down in the comments section. I have been thinking of potentially making, these kind of minor tweaks even to my bench. So even Foster to Steele, just for the possibility of Foster going down in price. But maybe that's overthinking a bit too much, to be honest. Brownhill, he might not even play now with Cork and Goodmanson. So with a 4.5 million, you just want someone who plays, and Billy Gilmore will offer that. He's on set pieces as well. He's actually doing a lot of through balls in pre-season, and he has the assist potential, even though it's very limited. So maybe those are two transfers I'm thinking of making. Ben White, at 4.5 million, an Arsenal defender, it looks really good on paper, but I'm just not that sure about Arsenal. I think they might concede today, and even in game weeks 2 and 3 against Manchester City and Chelsea, I just don't expect anything, to be honest. Ayling's not really a good option for the time being, but from game weeks, I'd say 5 onwards with a very good fixture on, and also game week 3 against Burnley, Ayling is very good. So looking long term, he's a good pick potentially, but I'm not so sure about now. And I do prefer Veltman over Ayling, but I already have Sanchez and I don't want to double up on 2 defences. And I already have a double up with Liverpool. So that's kind of changed my thinking there. And then when you look at the rest of my team, it's probably kind of fairly settled. I'm not so sure, but you look at Ivan Toney, for example. I'm not so sure. Could go for Rafinha instead of midfield, or find an extra million in my midfield, maybe Barnes or Greenwood being downgraded, and I can upgrade Toney to Wilson, for example. And Wilson actually starts seasons very well. He's got a great record against West Ham. So, there's different ways to play about it, and ultimately I want to look kind of medium to long term with a few short term picks, but I think it's very important to look into the future as well. But yeah, I've got quite a few kind of doubts about my team, but players like Salah, Bruno, I'm not going to think about too much, even Danny Ings and Antonio for the time being. But yeah, there's so many things that could change, of course, with FPL, and the more you overthink, the kind of more difficult it becomes to really settle on something. Have a feeling about Gabriel Jesus if he plays. Pep Guardiola was speaking about him actually. And by the way, I'm getting kind of like some mixed signals from my streaming service, so let me know about that. It's kind of frustrating, but yeah, it is what it is. What do you think about Calvert-Lewin? I like him, but I'm just not so sure. With all the uncertainty around Everton, I'm not so sure about them in general, even when they have everyone available. I think it could be good to start the season, but long term I'd prefer Bamford at the same price. In the short term I'd prefer Ings. But yeah, I mean, Everton do have very good fixtures for a long period of time. The reason why I say long term I prefer Bamford is just I think he will score more points and Leeds will score more goals. But, I might be wrong about that, to be honest. Ings or Jota? I'd say Ings for the first 3 game weeks. And with Jota, you just don't know when he's going to lose his spot. And with Ollie Watkins, he's a doubt, actually, for the weekend. I think that just opens up the pathway for Danny Ings. Should I change my lineup to some City defenders? Bissaka, James, Chelsea, Trent. That's the thing with Reece James. I'm just not so sure about him, to be honest. I might actually consider moving him on in your case. So maybe a City defender for Reece James would be the way forward. And Wan-Bissaka, he did actually outscore Luke Shaw. But if Luke Shaw continues with these underlying numbers, then you might as well go for him, in my opinion. But then again, Wan-Bissaka will actually not be too far off Shaw in terms of points. Maybe you're going with a different choice that ends up being the right one. Hello, Dylan. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll try to be doing more content in the future. But yeah, just been very busy. And hopefully after the holidays, I'll be able to do more. Tony or Rafinha, I think for the first few game weeks, I'd prefer Tony. I think you'll outscore him. That's just my personal opinion based on fixtures and the stats. But going forward long term, I'd probably prefer Rafinha. El Ghazi for the first 3 game weeks. Is it a smart move or too wishful? In terms of if you're looking for an outside punt, then yeah, he might be one of the best ones. But personally, I'd prefer Benrahma or someone else if you want to go for a differential. That's just my opinion. How about Sarr? I think for Watford, he's the best option. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I mean, from Watford, who else would I consider? Probably Feminina in defence, Bachmann in goal. Other than that, I probably wouldn't think of anyone else, really. Target, Soufal, Tierney or Cash. I think Soufal long-term is the best one by far. Otherwise, ironically, it could actually be Target or Cash for the first 3 game weeks. I'm not so sure about Target now with Ashley Young coming into the equation, but I really like Soufal. Will Buendia start? It looks like he is available. That's what Dean Smith said. Will he start? Different question. I think he will, especially with the absence of Ollie Watkins potentially. So my gut feeling is he will start, but just don't hold me accountable for that. And it's up to you, ultimately, if you think he's going to start and whether you get him into your team. What do you think about keeping 4 million in the bank to bring Kane or Lukaku later? I wouldn't do that, in my opinion. What I would do in your situation is have someone like Salah and Bruno, and then if Kane moves to City, or if Lukaku hits some form, or we approach game week 7 when Chelsea have a fantastic run of fixtures up until game week 11, that's when I would make 2 moves. Move Bruno Fernandes or Salah, depending on form and other kind of circumstances. Make 2 transfers and then bring one of those players in. I just don't really see a reason why you have 4 million on your bench right now, especially when Lukaku isn't starting in game week 1 and also just has really tough fixtures up until game week 6 where he might score in those games, but is his ceiling that high to justify 11.5 million? Probably not. So in my opinion, I wouldn't have 4 million on the bank. I would just have a team that you're happy with some big premiums in there, and then use those premiums to then kind of be flexible and change things around. That's just my opinion though. No questions here, just enjoy your streams as always, from one FPL YouTuber to another. Thank you FPL Animate, really appreciate it. And Anime should I say, Animate. But yeah, really appreciate it, mate. And yeah, for everyone who is watching, check out his channel as well. Really appreciate it, mate. Barnes or Benrahma, please reply. I'd go for Barnes personally. But just bear in mind that Barnes might be taken off early. He's still not technically fully available at the moment. But yeah, that's just kind of my personal preference. I do prefer Barnes over Benrahma, to be honest. We're 2 hours away from the deadline. Jesus Christ. I mean, the amount of overthinking that can happen right now is crazy. But I'll be aiming to, stream for as long as possible. It might not even be until the deadline. But if that's the case and I end the stream early, I'll be posting my final team on the community tab. I'll let you guys know about that. But this is how things stand at the moment. And my captaincy and vice captaincy is not going to be changing, just to let you guys know. It mainly be maybe, I'd say, some changes to the bench really, and possibly one of my midfielders and possibly striker. The rest should be fairly nailed though. Soufal, Barnes, Fernandes, Antonio or White, Benrahma, Sancho, Lukaku, Vardy, game week 1. Honestly, I just go for the first set of players, definitely. I think Soufal, Barnes, Fernandes, Antonio just seems far superior to the second set of players. Lukaku's not even starting in game week 1, although you have Vardy as a placeholder there. Sancho might not even play tomorrow, or should I say this weekend. So yeah, I'd go for the first set, Dylan. Lipuk says, rate my team. Dylan, Sanchez, Trent, Shaw, Target, Sarr, Jota, Salah, Bruno, Tony, Ings, Antonio, Foster, Ayling, Brownhill, Hoover. Yeah, I'd probably move Hoover on. So you've got Jota and Salah, so I wouldn't say Tsimikas. I'd probably go for even the Norwich defender or Amati, who could maybe start in game week 1 at least. But yeah, that's not really a priority in my opinion. In terms of the actual team, I like it for the first few game weeks. Sarr is actually an interesting pick. Target, if he starts, should be good. Will he start? That's a different question. Yeah, I mean, it's a good team, to be honest. There's no actual weakness, I'd say. It's mainly just kind of little nitpicks, really. But yeah, it's a solid team. Quite similar to mine. Most of our teams are going to be similar. But yeah, it's a good team. I don't tend to give ratings, but I'd say it's a solid 8 out of 10, probably. But of course, every team, no matter what, has weaknesses. It's impossible to make the perfect team. Hi, Dylan, Sarr or Benrahma? I have Antonio. In that case, I'd probably go for Sarr. But there's no problems with double ups, especially offensively. I've learned that, especially in Euros and UCL Fantasy, having double ups in attack can actually be very good. So don't be put off by that. But I just prefer Sarr maybe for the first few game weeks. Rafinha or Son? I mean, they're both different price points. It's very hard to predict. With Son, though, there's quite a lot of question marks in the air. Will Kane stay? Will he go? How will Kane play if he stays? How will Spurs play under the new manager? I think Son will do well. But a very difficult opening fixture, just like Rafinha. I think Rafinha is probably the safer pick in general because with Son, he might not be worth that 10 million. With Rafinha, he most likely will be justifying that 6.5 million price tag. That's just my opinion on it. I'm playing it super risky. Got Mane as captain instead of Salah, playing well pre-season and does well playing away. Fair enough. I think with that home and away thing though, I mean, to be fair, it was a bit different last season with kind of no fans for most games. Salah did very well actually in away games. Maybe that could change this season again. But Mane, he's always kind of overlooked, and sometimes Salah blanks and Mane's the one doing well, so that could actually turn out right for you. I personally prefer Salah. He's on penalties and he just gets more points in general, but maybe for the first few game weeks you're onto something there. And he ended the season very strongly, Mane, so that's another thing to consider. What do you think about Salah, Mahrez, Bruno, Benrahma and Greenwood? Well, there's a lot of players there, but Salah, I wouldn't say he's essential. You don't have to have him, but he's the closest to essential in my opinion in the game. Mahrez is actually a very good choice. I think for the first 3, 4, 5 game weeks, fantastic option. Of course, you can't have everyone. So, some of those players you're mentioning there, you can't have all of them. Bruno Fernandes, the thing I like about him a lot is that I think most things are going to be going through him, especially with all these players out for Manchester United. And yeah, he's just a great way to hold money, and then in game week 7 you can maybe make 2 moves and get Lukaku in up front, or move to another premium midfielder like Son, and also Kane maybe if he goes to City especially. Benrahma's a good differential for the first few game weeks, but I don't like him long term if I'm honest. And as for Greenwood, I think he should start the first few game weeks. Longer term, I would suspect him to be benched more often than not, but for the first few game weeks I think he's very good. So yeah, they're all very good options. Benrahma would be the kind of weakest link there, but they're all good in their own right. Not all of them are long-term assets though, in my opinion. Zucchi says Mahrez is about as nailed as he ever will be for City with all their injuries. On top of that, he had a great pre-season. I find it so difficult to overlook him. Have you considered him? I have considered him, but I haven't had him in any of my drafts. And the reason why is because I wanted to spread the funds around across my team. And also I've already got Salah and Bruno. And with Mahrez, there's still always the possibility of him, even if he's not benched, just coming off early, or the kind of goals and assists being shared amongst all those players. So yeah, with Mahrez, he's always an interesting option. He's always very explosive, but he's also quite inconsistent at times. But yeah, he's definitely, this is the time to own him in my opinion. Rafinha or Benrahma? For the first few game weeks, Benrahma, but long term, definitely Rafinha. And if I had to start with one in my game week 1 team, assuming that I'm happy with the rest of my team, I'd probably go for Benrahma and then look to get Rafinha in around game week 3 or 5. That's my opinion. I've joined the league. I'm going to destroy you all. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Hardeep. And yeah, we'll see how you do this season. Good luck as well. I have Salah, Mane and Bruno. Thoughts? That's a lot of money into your midfield. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having the Salah Mane double up. The reason why I'm going against it is because you're going to have sometimes some maybe captaincy headaches between the two. And also look at game week 3 when Liverpool play Chelsea. Having Salah and Mane the ceiling is probably very... so I'd reconsider that maybe. But yeah, definitely Salah and Bruno, two of the best premiums you can get. And Mane's still a fantastic option and differential, don't get me wrong. But I think Salah and Mane, you could always just go for Tsimikas and Trent Alexander-Arnold and then Salah to have your triple up in Liverpool. Barnes or Benrahma? I prefer Barnes, to be honest, Captain Jack. Rafinha or Son? Yeah, as I said before, I prefer Rafinha in terms of, looking at value and who I think will do very well across the season. But with Son, you can never overlook him, and if he starts to look like a really good player, a lot of us might actually start ripping apart our teams and looking for ways to get him in, especially if you don't want to get rid of Salah or Bruno, all these other premium assets you have. But yeah, I think for the time being, I'd probably say Rafinha, because you could always bench him. With Son, I'm just not so sure about him yet. I need to see more. Havertz played 120 minutes in Super Cup. Would you still be comfortable to own Havertz for Game Week 1 and 2? If not, Ziyech is injured. Who's next? Pulisic? Havertz might play in Game Week 1 and he could do very well, but even beyond that, with Lukaku coming into the fore, I think Havertz will go from sometimes playing on the wing or as one of the forwards to up front and sometimes just being on the bench. So I'm just not so sure with Havertz at the moment, and I think for just a little bit more you can get Mahrez, who's going to get a similar amount of game time, at least for the opening portion of the season. And then if not, you can go to Barnes, you can go to Jota, Greenwood, Rafinha. There's a lot of options around this price, even Grealish. So ultimately with Havertz, I'd probably look away personally. And with Chelsea as well, another thing about them is that their attack, I mean, now Lukaku's going to be their focal point, but apart from him, who else is going to be the kind of main consistent scorer or assister in that team? You just couldn't tell for sure. Greenwood or Jota? Tough one. I mean, the reason why I opted for Greenwood in the end is to enable my double up in Liverpool defence with Tsimikas. I think at 4 million, it's just too good an opportunity to turn down. And if it doesn't turn out right now to be right, he's only 4 million anyway. And with Jota, I just never know with him. He's very inconsistent. He's very explosive. He can start, Game Week 1 do really well, but then be benched in Game Weeks 2 or 3. Just not so sure about that. And also, as I pointed out earlier, just that Game Week 3 fixture as well against Chelsea, just having that double up of Jota and Salah, you'd probably want to bench Jota for that. If not, the ceiling isn't too high. Greenwood or Maddison? I prefer Greenwood, to be honest, and instead of Maddison, I prefer Barnes personally. The core is near locked in, 8 to 11, down to 50-50 choices like Mahrez, Tony versus 7.5 million midfielder Ings, and Son, 4.5 million midfielder versus Barnes, 7.5 million midfielder. Small choices like no Foster, no price drop, but heard it based on percentage and fodder that don't leave. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of 50-50 decisions that can go either way, but either way, it's really difficult to say. But ultimately, some of these decisions you take, they might not pay off in the first few game weeks, but they might be correct in the long term. So I try to not overthink all of these things too much, but of course it's good to have backup plans, contingency plans, and to be flexible. It's important, but don't overdo it, in my opinion. But yeah, definitely all of those kind of problems or 50-50s that you propose, they're all worth considering, but at the same time, they could make you rip apart your team and maybe make it worse. So just be careful with that. Benrahma going under the radar, seems to be playing where Lingard played last season. That's true, FPL Penguin, that's a good point. And pre-season, he's been a monster. He's been very good. He's on set pieces, and I just like him. At 6 million, he's actually a really good option. The reason why I haven't gone for him myself is I already have Antonio up front, and I just wanted to kind of balance my attack and my midfield. But he's a good option, definitely. Don't get me wrong about that. I have considered him briefly, but ultimately at the moment, I think I'll be going without him. But you never know. In the future, he might be coming into my team. All the best for the new season, mate. Thank you, mate. You too. And yeah, hopefully you do really well. Hi, Dylan. Mahrez or Greenwood? That's tough. I mean, to be honest, if you back Mahrez to start the first few weeks, I'd probably go for him if you have the money. But yeah, I think they're both good options, definitely. Is Alexander-Arnold a must-have? I'm planning to have more attacking players. I'd say he's the closest to essential from defenders, but he's not essential. Because you can get rid of him and you can spread the funds across your defence. You can get Chelsea defender, you can get a City defender, and they're two of the best defences in the league, arguably better than Liverpool at this moment in time. And you can see an attacking return or two at the very least, and some bonus points. And also, just in the calendar year, he's by far the most creative defender. He offers a lot of attacking threat. And in terms of big chances, he's in his own category compared to Soufal, Creswell and Robertson, who are the closest in terms of big chances created in 2021. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm going to be going with Trent. Not essential though. Soucek or El Ghazi? I mean, Soucek, he's actually being overlooked, to be fair, in a way, but I wouldn't be going for him. For the first few game weeks, I'd probably say El Ghazi, but ultimately, I would prefer Ings from the Villa attack, really. Emil Smith-Rowe in game week 1. I'm just not too confident in Arsenal in general, if I'm being honest. I've only got White, kind of medium to long term as a budget rotation option in defence. But yeah, with Smith-Rowe, I don't know. He's a decent budget option in midfield, but you can always just go for a 4.5 and then spread the money in your attack and midfield, the rest of your team. So not too confident in him myself, but could do really well in game week 1. But then you look at game weeks 2 and 3, not so sure. Nobody on Nicola Pepe. I know Arsenal is iffy, but he ended last season very well. He did but game weeks 2 and 3, that's a big put off. After that, of course, he has a very good set of fixtures, but you look at the other hand, at the same time, Arteta just doesn't seem to fully trust him. So even if he does really well over the opening 3 game weeks, who knows, he might be benched in game weeks 4 or 5. So there's kind of too many question marks about him and also Arsenal Football Club. How about Vardy? I think for game week 1, he's one of the best options, and you can always have him as a kind of enabler, or not enabler, should I say? That's a stupid word to say. A placeholder for Harry Kane or Lukaku going into the future, or even Bruno Fernandes. But I'm just not so sure. You can always cover him with Barnes, maybe even Maddison, or Iheanacho. But then again, I'm not too sure of Iheanacho myself. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. There's no right or wrong answer. I think for game week 1, Vardy could be one of the highest scoring players, but just not too confident in him this season. Soufal or Benrahma? Already have Antonio. I mean, it depends on the rest of your defence and midfield sing, but I'd probably prefer Soufal, at least long term. Wilson a good option? I think so, especially to start the season. The kind of things that put me off him is Newcastle. They don't fill me with confidence. He's injury prone. And Wilson has been a bit of a troll to me in the past. Maybe that's a bit of bias there. And it's probably best to kind of avoid that sort of thinking. But yeah, with Wilson, I'm just not so sure. You can always just get Tony for 1 million less, who's on penalties. He's the talisman for Brentford. He's not injury prone, and he can get up the bonus points. But yeah, Wilson, very good finisher. He's going to rack up bonus points. Tends to start the season very well. Has a great record against West Ham. Very low ownership. I think it's around 8%. It's gone up quite significantly, but still under 10%. So yeah, there's a lot to like about Wilson. He's a good option. 3-4-3 of Bruno, Salah, Barnes and Greenwood or Gundogan. I'd go for Greenwood instead of Gundogan, but that's just kind of a personal taste. However, if you had enough money to get Mahrez, you could just go for Mahrez instead of Greenwood. But yeah, that's a difficult one. I like either starting with a City midfielder or using free transfers game week 2 for them. Mahrez a bit much in my opinion. Interested in Torres. Gundogan, as I think they are ones most likely to play false 9. May wait 1 game week. What info we get. Yeah, I completely agree, Marco, to be honest. And yeah, Mahrez might be a bit too much in that way, but if your team structure allows it, what you could do with Mahrez is actually hold him for a few game weeks, and then when he starts to become a bit of a rotation doubt, you can always upgrade him to Son. If not, you can move him to Havertz or someone else. I think in a way you do get flexibility with him, but it does restrict other areas of your team, and maybe you're not able to have Salah and Bruno at the same time. If you switch Trent plus Antonio for Digne and DCL, I wouldn't do that in my opinion, especially with all the uncertainty surrounding Everton. I think DCL is a great option to start the season. Even Digne could be if he's fit. And by the way, I say that because I'm not so sure if he's one of those players who are isolating. But yeah, I just prefer Trent and Antonio. Would you pick Sancho? Ultimately, no. I think from United, I'd be looking at Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, Greenwood and Bruno, but I wouldn't be looking at Sancho for the time being. Get the likes up, lads. Thank you, AJDC. Really appreciate it. And yeah, also the same with your Twitch channel. For anyone who has Twitch, follow AJDC on there. And yeah, he does gaming content all the time there. So yeah, I would really appreciate it. And as he said, Smash the like button if you are watching, and if you want to get your questions answered, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and you'll get your questions answered. Also turn on notifications, share this video around, and also the live streams with people who love FPL, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I post content there, and you can always talk to me there about football and FPL. So thank you for tuning in, of course. Let's get back to my team. I actually haven't even been able to give it too much thought over the last few days. I just literally haven't had any time to really think about my team. But I think, overnight I was starting to finalise things. And this is what I have at the moment. Feel free to kind of give me your pros and cons about it, what you would change. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts as well. But we'll wait and see. Rafinha or Tony, says Singh. Currently playing 3-5-2 of midfield of Salah, Bruno, Mahrez, Rafinha and Sarr. Very good question. There's no right or wrong. I think to start the season I prefer Tony, but you can always make 2 transfers and then get Rafinha in game week 5, and incidentally that's towards the beginning of Tony's fixture swing for the worse. I think around game week 6, that's when Brentford have a very awful run of fixtures. So you can always just have Tony to start with and then get Rafinha in later. Jota over Greenwood. There's no right or wrong answer with that, in my opinion. The thing that concerns me with Jota is that he could just be benched easily. I think he'll start game week 1, but game weeks 2 and 3, I'm just not so sure. And in game week 3, he plays Chelsea. So if you already have Salah, having a double up in their attack against probably the best defence or second best defence in the league, I'm just not so sure about that. Upgrade Wilson to Ings. That's tough. I think, ironically, for the first 6 to 8 game weeks, Wilson's probably better in terms of fixtures. But for the first 3, Ings is a better short-term option, at least on paper. I think you don't have to have Ings, especially if you have Wilson, you have Antonio or Tony, all these other kind of strikers. No right or wrong there. Would I upgrade him? I probably would, just for the first 3 fixtures, but that's just a personal point of view. Is it okay to go with 5 midfielders? It is, but I'd also be careful with having 5 midfielders and also having 3 forwards, because you're going to be having headache selections, especially if you have a lot of defenders in there. What do you think about Adam Armstrong? Not too confident in him at the moment, to be honest. I want to see more from him and Southampton before committing. And don't spam the chat because, just for future reference, I will put people on timeout and potentially ban, obviously, if they keep persisting. So just bear that in mind. No problem, AJDC. Anytime, mate. What do you think about wildcarding during the first international break after getting a feel for the league, especially if Kane joins City plus trying to fit in Lukaku? I think game week 7 looks like a very good time to wildcard, but I wouldn't book it in yet. Just in my opinion, I have a good idea about when you could wildcard, but don't just settle it in and just say, I'm definitely wildcarding there. You can always look at other options, in my opinion, and a wildcard can sometimes be utilised better if you leave it late. So there's no right or wrong there. Jota, Sufal, Marty or Benrahma, Creswell, Simicast, says Legolas, and welcome back to the channel, Legolas, really appreciate it. Out of those 2 that you propose, I'd probably go for, that's tough, probably the second set of players, and the reason or the main factor that's swinging me towards the second trio is that Vestergaard's joining Leicester City and Amati will probably not start from game week 2 onwards. DCL or Richarlison worth considering? I'd probably say DCL. I think he's the focal point. Richarlison's very inconsistent, and he also happens to be a sideman. But I'd probably go for DCL. Thoughts on Grealish, Dylan? I think he'll start, if not in game week 1, in game week 2. But I prefer Mahrez and potentially Gundogan. With Grealish, he could have a very good game and still not get a goal or assist. I don't think he's going to be the main talisman for Man City like he was with Villa. So I would expect a kind of decrease in his points per minute and points per start, but he's still a good option. It's one to keep an eye on, but I want to see more from him and City before committing. Is Gundogan worth it for other midfielders that I have? Mount, Maddison, Salah, Soucek, Dallas. Gundogan's a good option. He's worth it, no doubt about it. I just prefer, from City anyway, I prefer Mahrez. And when I look at, for example, 7.5 and 7 million players, I prefer Barnes, I prefer Greenwood, I prefer Jota. But that's my personal opinion, Dosan. Hey Dylan, is Foster going to start? I have Sanchez and Steele. Should I change Steele to Foster? To be honest, mate, I don't think Foster's going to start. If Bachmann does go to Ajax or he does make a move, then Foster will become the keeper until they sign someone else. But just with Foster, I just don't expect him to start for the time being. However, if Bachmann has a run of bad games, then you would expect Foster to come in. So from the 4 million keepers, he's the most likely to start becoming a starter. But in this moment in time, no. So there's nothing wrong with having Steele and Sanchez at the moment, unless you really want to have triple Brighton at one point, which, to be fair, you probably wouldn't, but never say never, I guess. Marcus says, I was set on DCL and Digne for a while, but the injury doubt, it's gone now, but still don't like Everton uncertainty. And despite it being a friendly, the performance versus United was bad, put me off a bit. Yeah, I think within the opening half an hour, United were 3-0 up, they ended up winning 4-0. Just too many question marks with Everton, and Digne and DCL are still good options. No one's going to say that they're not. They definitely still are good options. But with all the uncertainty, with 5 players missing out, DCL might not even start. I think he will, but there's a small chance he doesn't. I just think with all these question marks, you can just go for someone else. And then if Everton start to show promise, remember, they have a very good run of fixtures all the way until like game week 12 or something like that. Then that's when you can start hopping onto them. I don't think they're essential to have from the get-go. Thoughts on Adam Armstrong? Yeah, as I said before to the person who asked me, I need to see more from Southampton and Armstrong before committing to him. He might be one of the better options around his price, especially he's very cheap. But I just want to wait and see. And to be honest, I'm looking at all these 7.5, 8 million strikers. I'm probably going to be leaning towards them more so than anything. So what I might do actually going into the future is downgrade, for example, Greenwood when he starts to become a rotation risk. Downgrade him to Rafinha when the fixtures turn for Leeds. Then upgrade Tony to Wilson or another 7.5 million striker. Or if not, I can also move Ings when the fixtures turn for Aston Villa to Bamford or Calvert-Lewin. So I think it's very important to have that flexibility. And ultimately, 6 million for Armstrong, going for him now is just very risky in my opinion. And even if it pays off, it might not in the long term. So yeah, I'd just be looking elsewhere at the moment. Barnes or Tony, if it's a question between them two, it's tough. Tony might be the more sensible and safer pick, but I prefer Barnes. I just really like the look of him, and before his injury looked really good. Pre-season looked exceptional. Community Shield looked very sharp as well against a good team. Sancho or Havertz? For game week 1, that's tough. I'd probably say Havertz, but he did play 120 minutes the other day, so he is a bit of a doubt. Ultimately, I'd be kind of steering clear from both at the moment until we're kind of more sure about both teams going into the season. Thoughts on Pepe? Adam Armstrong already gave my opinion on that, Radic. As for Pepe, game week 1 very good. Don't like him for game weeks 2 and 3. However, going from game weeks 4 onwards, I do expect him to be benched occasionally, especially when the others return. But he's a good option, and don't discount him. Greenwood and Wilson or Havertz and Tony? I'd probably go for Greenwood and Wilson, Tom. Greenwood or Gundogan? I'd go for Greenwood, just a fan. Thoughts on Richarlison? He's a decent option. On paper anyway, but I just prefer Calvert-Lewin from Everton. I prefer all the other 7.5 million and 8 million strikers I suggested earlier. So he's kind of low down in the pecking order in my opinion, but he might be someone worth looking at some point. Antonio or Wilson? Look, I honestly, if anything, I think Wilson might outscore Antonio in game week 1, but I prefer Antonio going forward. I just have more faith in West Ham as a team, and they're both injury prone, Antonio even more so. But I just prefer Antonio. I think his underlying stats, his consistency is right up there. And I have more confidence in West Ham. That's the kind of main thing for me, as well as the fixtures. Thoughts on Grealish, Dylan? As I said before with Grealish, he's someone I'd want to look at. And same with a lot of these new signings, to be honest. With Lukaku, don't get me wrong, he's someone that probably from game week 7 I'd be looking to get into my team with that fixture run. But with Grealish himself, I'm just not so sure about him as an FPL asset at the moment at City, and I prefer Mahrez, ultimately. Thoughts on Dele Alli? Had a great preseason. Yeah, he's another one I actually haven't mentioned at all, but he's 6.5 million. He's someone who could actually do really well. Against Arsenal, he should have scored twice. I don't know how he didn't. But if he can fix up that finishing, he's getting into good position, he's showing hunger, he could be someone who can do really well. But yeah, I just think with 6.5 million long term, maybe Rafinha is just a safer pick. I prefer Harvey Barnes and Greenwood. I think they're more likely to be consistent assets this season. But yeah, it's a good shout that you make there. Any news on DCL? Will he start? Rafa Benitez gave a press conference today and he said that DCL is available. He didn't say he will start, but he said he's available. However, on the flip side, he said that 5 players, including James Rodriguez, are isolating at the moment. So there's quite a lot of problems surrounding Everton. Thoughts on Havertz? I like him potentially for game week 1, but with the arrival of Lukaku, he's not going to get into as good positions, I think, as he was beforehand, especially when he was playing as the false nine or as the central striker. But he's still someone worth looking at, worth keeping an eye on. But at the moment, I'm probably just not going to be considering him, to be honest. Calvert-Lewin or Ings? I think for the first 3 game weeks, I'd be going for Ings, especially with all the uncertainty surrounding Everton. Otherwise, medium to long term, Calvert-Lewin's probably a better option. Also, less injury prone. Havertz, Sancho or Mahrez? I'd probably say Mahrez from those 3, David. What if you own 3 players from the same team and then a transfer happens and I got 4 from the same team? What will happen? I think it will just prompt you to make a transfer, to be honest. And you won't be able to kind of lock in your team pretty much until that happens. Or maybe we'll make a transfer for you. But yeah, I think that's what happens actually. Greenwood, Rafinha, Tony or Man City players? It depends which Man City players you are looking at and how much you have available. If you can get Mahrez, I'd probably be looking at him. Otherwise, from those you mentioned, I actually like Greenwood the most, and then Tony, and then Rafinha. However, long term, Rafinha is probably a better option than Tony. Barnes or Son or Mahrez? I'd probably go for Barnes from those 3, at least medium to long term. If you want someone for the first 3 to 5 game weeks who's probably going to start, I'd go for Mahrez. Trent, Havertz, Manquillo or Cash, Son, Soufal? Tough one. I'd probably go for the second set of players. And remember, instead of Manquillo, if you do decide to go for the first set of players, Jose Manuel, you could just go for Amati or the Norwich defender or Tsimikas, to be honest. I have a similar team, but when Mahrez and Rafinha over Greenwood and Antonio, that's fair enough, to be honest. And a lot of teams are going to be similar. The template is very strong. Is Digne going to play? I'm just not so sure. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment surrounding Digne and Everton in general. 5 players are missing, including James Rodriguez. But what we do know is Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are starting. If you're asking me, I think Digne will play. Lacazette, Aubameyang and Nketiah are injured. Should I put Balogun or Martinelli? I think Balogun's a bit more likely to start given that Martinelli was at the Olympics, but then again, neither of them have too much faith in them put by Arteta. As a 5 million option on the bench, why not go for Balogun, I think. But if he doesn't start in game week 1, then obviously you might be kicking yourself a little bit. Best option for around 7.5 million. In terms of midfield, I'd probably be saying Greenwood or Jota, and if not, I'd say Barnes. One of those 3. If I had to rank them, assuming they all start, I'd probably go for Greenwood, Barnes and Jota. But to be honest, actually, maybe that's untrue. I think if Jota starts, he's exceptional. His numbers are very similar to Salah's, but I don't know. With Jota, I definitely expect rotation to come into the equation. That's why I prefer the other 2 slightly more. And also, you can just go for Tsimikas as your 3rd Liverpool player. When is Robertson back? There's nothing on that front yet. All that Klopp said is that he's missing this weekend. I expect Robertson to be back by game week 3 or 4, but you never know. Something can happen in training, or he might be injured for a longer period of time. He might have to have surgery, whatever. But I think it's fine. He should be out for a few weeks, and then he'll be good to go. But there's no kind of settlement there. Opinions on Wilson? Very good differential. Tends to start the season well. I've talked about him earlier in the stream. I really like him. He's been in some of my drafts, but I'm just not so sure about him, especially if it means going without one of Barnes or Greenwood and then having to have Rafinha for the first few game weeks. Is triple West Ham and Antonio Benrahma and Creswell concerning, or should I swap Benrahma? It's not concerning. There's nothing wrong with it, but maybe a double up is the kind of sweet spot there. But yeah, you don't have to just go away from them. And as I said before, you can just go for a double up in attack or in defence. There's nothing wrong with it, so long as you have confidence in the players you select. Pogba, not for me, Royal, and I just don't even think he's going to start in game week 1. Is Raul Jimenez being overlooked? To be honest, with Jimenez, what I would do anyway, he's being out for a very long time. Assess him over the first 3 game weeks, and then from game weeks 4 all the way to 14, I believe, Wolves have a fantastic set of fixtures. That's when you can jump onto Raul Jimenez and other Wolves assets. So to be honest, he might be being overlooked a little bit, but he has tough fixtures to start the season. So why not assess the situation, and then if he shows promise, even if it's just underlying stats, despite some blanks, you can just get him in game week 4 onwards and then enjoy the fixture run. I don't think you have to have him yet, especially when you have players like Ings with very good fixtures to start with, Antonio, Wilson, Tony, Calvert-Lewin, Bamford, so many. Do you think Grealish will start? I think so. Most City fans believe he will, but he's not completely nailed to start. I think Mahrez is more nailed to start, and that's why I prefer him. If a player transfers that makes you have 4 from one team, it will stay until the next game week where you have to transfer one player out of that 4 first. Exactly, William. That's what I suspected, but yeah, that's a very concise way of putting it, so thanks for that. It's never happened to me before, but you never know. It might happen to me one day. Havertz plus Trent or Cash plus Son for Game Week 1. Tough one. I mean, for Game Week 1 exclusively, I'd say Havertz and Trent, and then you can move Havertz on, but I just not too sure about Havertz going into Game Week 2 all the way to 6. Yeah, no problem, Jose Manuel. Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate it. Will Greenwood start? I think he will. But of course, if Sancho does start tomorrow, and Ollie did hint at it in the press conference earlier, then it is a cause for concern, and maybe it'll be Martial up front, Sancho on the right, and Greenwood's benched. So that's a possibility. He's not completely nailed, but I think Greenwood should start some of the first few game weeks. And even if he doesn't, he's going to get some starts here and there. But of course, I recognise how risky he is, no doubt about it. Is DCL a good pick? He is. The reason why I'm not going for him myself is the uncertainty surrounding Everton. 5 players being or isolating, including James Rodriguez. I don't think he's a bad pick in my opinion, Ahmed, but I can understand why you think so. Go for Tony. Grealish will start. Yeah, I agree. Mahrez, Barnes, Greenwood, Tony. Pick 2. Tough one. You're giving me a lot of responsibility there. If I had to pick, I'd probably say Mahrez and Barnes, but I like the other 2 a lot. That's why they're in my team. Hi Dylan, tough question this. Would you go for Greenwood and Wilson or Barnes and DCL? That's very tough. I'd probably go for Greenwood and Wilson just as a duo. If there wasn't so much uncertainty surrounding Everton, then yeah, I'd go for Barnes and DCL. But because of that, probably sway towards the first one. But I have to admit, there's not too much in that. Barnes or Greenwood? That's tough. They're both, in a way, rotation risks, and they're not always going to start. I'd probably go for Barnes, though, just about, and I think he should start. But yeah, very tough. DCL and Buendia to start. I think they will, Rabi. I think both of them will. However, just bear in mind there's a small possibility that one of them won't. Comments about Zaha. I just think with all the other options, I'm just not confident in Palace. Even if they have a new manager, they might be more offensive. He's a wait and see. And Palace have some pretty poor fixtures. So at the moment, I'm not thinking about Zaha. Wood, Jimenez, what do you think about them? With Chris Wood, he's always overlooked. He's not really necessarily an attractive pick, but he is a good option. With Jimenez, I think just wait until game week 4 before really committing to him. I don't think there's a real reason to get him in right now. His ceiling is probably going to be low for the first 3 game weeks anyways, and there's a lot that we need to learn about Wolves and the new manager. So what we've seen in pre-season only tells us part of the story, so let's wait and see. Greenwood over Barnes, that's a tough one. As I said before, it's a 50-50. I'd probably edge towards Barnes, but they're both good options. I prefer Raya in goal from Brentford. Fair enough, and he could be another shout at 4.5 million. There's Woodman for the first game week at least. There's Sanchez, there's Backman. There's no right or wrong. I'm just going for Sanchez. I have more confidence in Brighton's defence, to be honest. Thanks, mate. Great video. Keep it up. Thank you, Dosan. Really appreciate it. And all the very best of luck to you as well. And I'll probably be streaming until 6, so keep getting your questions in. And then I'll be finalising my team and sharing it with you lot online. But if not, I will be streaming all the way to the deadline stream. I'll let you guys know, of course. But yeah, I'll try to keep going through your comments. Barnes or Rafinha? I think Barnes to start the season. That's kind of a personal opinion. Rafinha might be safer, and you're saving a transfer further down the line, but I prefer Barnes at the moment. Lukaku for Kane, game week 2. I wouldn't be starting off with any of them in game week 1. Lukaku's not starting in game week 1. That's confirmed by Tuchel himself. And Harry Kane is facing Manchester City. So even if he does play, is he going to be in the right state of mind? Are Spurs even going to score a goal against City? They might do, but just there's a lot of question marks around the fixture, around the player, and also with Lukaku, he's just come in. So I'd be mainly waiting until game week 7 for Lukaku, maybe a bit earlier if you want. I think Chelsea are fixture proof, and despite them scoring only 25 goals under Tuchel, I believe, in the Premier League, their expected goals, the amount of chances they create, they're right up there, only behind Liverpool and Manchester City. So you would expect Lukaku to really do well, but I just won't go for any of them at the moment. I wouldn't go for it myself. take a punt on Ferran Torres. I like Torres if he starts, but I think he's always a constant rotation risk. So I probably would say no, honestly. That's just my opinion. Just because I said no doesn't mean you have to say no. Cresswell or Shaw? I'd go for Shaw because Manchester United have good fixtures from both an attacking and defensive point of view. Even in Game Week 1, I'm just not sure if West Ham are going to keep a clean sheet against Newcastle. Antonio or Wilson? Have Benrahma. If you're set on Benrahma, then I might go for Wilson. In your case, there's no right or wrong answer there. I think they're both good options. Tsimikas or Amati for more mid-term? Well, to be honest, probably Tsimikas, because Amati will probably last until Game Week 2. Then you would expect Vestergaard to come in with Soyuncu until the other centre-backs come back into play, like Johnny Evans and Fofana. So Amati, I just don't really see a long-term future for him. With Tsimikas, he's going to be playing most likely until Robertson comes back. So I'd go for Tsimikas there. Are you not considering Son or Mahrez? I've considered them. I've done drafts before and Son was in it. And with Mahrez, I've talked about him a lot in this stream. I really like him, but I'm not going to be going for them, I think, in Game Week 1. Ings or Son? Why in for Tony? I probably would start Tony. I have a feeling he's going to score today, and I think Brentford will get a goal or two. As for Ings or Son, I think for the first 3 game weeks, you can just go for Ings, and then going into Game Week 4, you can just go for Son. The kind of bad thing about not going with Son at the moment is in Game Weeks 3 and 4, when Spurs have some fantastic fixtures, by the way, it's very difficult to get them in. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, I'd probably start Tony over White. I wouldn't take a punt on Torres, as I said before. Don't spam the chat, please. Thanks, Dylan. I was linked towards Greenwood and Wilson. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, sometimes, it's kind of reassuring to hear someone else say it. But yeah, I mean, 50-50 decisions. They can go either way. If it doesn't pay off this week, it might next week. So don't worry about it. Same team except Wilson for Tony and Rafinha for Barnes. Yeah, a lot of people are going to be having similar teams. But, it's a sign of well-researched teams, I guess. Sign of a very strong template. They're all good options, though. There's no right or wrong. Rafinha, Son and Benrahma, or Ings, Greenwood and Barnes. To be honest, I'd probably go for the second set. Genius Gamer, I'd go for Ings, Greenwood and Barnes. Greenwood or Jota? There's no right or wrong here. Again, I want to keep stressing this. I'm personally going for Greenwood because it allows me to get Salah, Trent and Tsimikas. And also, I like United's fixtures for the first few game weeks. There's a lot of players missing out for United, so Greenwood should start. With Jota, he's a constant rotation risk with Mane and Firmino. Thank you so much, man, and good luck in Game Week 1. Thank you, Baraka. Really appreciate it, and all the best of luck for you as well. Jota versus Greenwood for the next 6 game weeks. Tough one. I'd probably say Greenwood because I expect him to start more games, especially with Rashford being out and Sancho being eased in. And with Jota, he's got that Game Week 3 fixture against Chelsea. You already have Salah for that. It's kind of overkill there. So I'd probably say Greenwood. Ings or Antonio? That's tough. For the first 3 game weeks, I'd say Ings. Looking beyond that, Antonio. Hopefully that kind of sums it up for you. But yeah. Greenwood or Benrahma? I'd go for Greenwood. No need to spam the chat. Like I said, anyone who does it from now on will be put on timeout. Apologies for that, but it kind of gets in the way from other people who are trying to get their questions across. Are you rating teams? If you put your team up, then I can rate it for you. I don't tend to give ratings. What I just do is analyze the weaknesses and strengths of the teams, or Evan, should I say. Welcome, PES 2021. Really appreciate you joining in. For how long is Watkins out? There's nothing really kind of said there by Dean Smith, but I think he should be out for Game Week 1 and possibly Game Week 2 and 3. So yeah, Watkins is pretty much a no-go in my opinion. Why not Steele instead of Foster? I feel like Foster will drop in price like a stone price. Yeah, I agree. And this is something I raised at the beginning of this video when talking about the kind of weaknesses in my team. And Foster could very well easily go down in price. And I'm not really going to be going for triple Brighton. So I might end up changing that. And maybe Brownhill will be Gilmore, for example. There might be a few changes in this team yet. Veltman could come in for Ayling or Ben White. Could get Callum Wilson in for Tony. Could get Rafinha in for one of the mid-price midfielders I have. There's quite a few things that could change, but the rest of it should be fairly nailed. What about Maddison? Good option is on set pieces, but the way I look at it, around 6.5 to 7.5. Those 4 or 5 names I keep on mentioning, I just think they offer better value, more consistency. Maddison is injury prone as well, so not too sure about that. Son or Mahrez? To start this season, I go for Mahrez. but long term, maybe Son is the more safer pick. I'm standing between Benrahma and Tony. What do you think? I mean, it's a fair kind of argument to have, but if you already have Antonio, you can just go for Tony, in my opinion, but they're both good. Hey brother, how about Dallas for Greenwood? I wouldn't go for Dallas in my opinion, especially for Greenwood. I think Greenwood should be a better option. What do you think about Mason Mount? From Chelsea, he's probably one of the better options in midfield, but I just don't know. With Chelsea, I said this before, Lukaku's really the only attacking asset I'm considering from now on, and that would be around game week 7. Otherwise, I'm just looking at the defenders really. Is picking Son game week 1 too risky? I find no route to get him in further week. Well, there's always a way, but unfortunately it would probably mean getting Salah or Bruno Fernandes out, or if not, downgrading one of your strikers to upgrade one of your midfielders. This is the thing though, you can't have everyone, and you can't have a route to every single player, so it really depends on, do you think Son's going to be a great asset this season? And I think he will do well. Will he do as well as last season? Not in my opinion. I could be wrong about that. So you just can't have a route for everything. It's impossible to make the perfect team. The most important thing though is that you have some degree of flexibility in your team, and you can make changes when new players come into play and form comes into the equation. And yeah, I mean, as I said before, yeah, there's no need to spam the chat. I have to put you on timeout because, yeah, I already made a few warnings there, so apologies for that. Just how it is. What about Bernardo Silva? Well, there's kind of talks about him leaving Manchester City. He's not really the kind of our most ideal asset anyway. I'd prefer Mahrez from Manchester City, for example. So, yeah, with Bernardo Silva, I just wouldn't be considering him at the moment. I'm taking a punt on not going with Trent Alexander-Arnold and going with Tsimikas. What do you think? As I said before, I don't think Trent is essential, so that's fair enough. There's no right or wrong there. And you can go without Trent, you can spread the funds and have a very good team. But if you do go without Trent, I'd probably try to make amends in your midfield, whether it's having Mahrez, Barnes, Greenwood, have a really strong midfield, maybe 5 midfielders or 4 really good midfielders and 3 good attackers. But yeah, that's fair enough. Carl, I did mute him in the end. Going differential, Pickford, Wan-Bissaka, Cancelo, Digne, Mane, Captain Jota, Mahrez, Gundogan, Wood, Vardy. That's really differential. That's the kind of most differential team I've seen. Of course, I don't agree with all of the picks in there, but some of them are very explosive. They could do extremely well. All the very best of luck to you, to be honest. And it's kind of a more fun way of playing the game, to be honest, in a way. Diaz or Cancelo? Honestly, look, I prefer Cancelo. The problem is he's a constant rotation risk. So because of that, I'd say Diaz. However, if they both started every game, or at least Cancelo played most games, then I'd definitely go for him, as I did last season. Grealish or Rafinha? Well, I'll answer your question as well, Haroon. I would go for Rafinha, at least if you're looking medium to long term. Barnes or Greenwood? I would go for Barnes, but they're both very good options. For the beginning of the season, you could argue go for Greenwood and then go for Barnes, but yeah, I just prefer Barnes in my opinion. Can't wait for us to open curtains on new Prem season, only to lose to Prem first time as Brentford and Tony scores as I don't own him, where you get bantered. Jokes aside, I'm actually quietly confident. I don't know, Arsenal should win today, but nothing would surprise me anymore, to be honest. I expect Brentford to score 1 or 2, if I'm honest. But yeah, hopefully Arsenal win, hopefully, even if it means Tony blanks. Thoughts on which City defender? Probably Diaz. If Cancelo is going to be the starter, at least for most of the opening game weeks, then I'd say him, or John Stones, but Diaz is just the most nailed. So that's why it's very important for the game week to start, the season to start. We kind of get a good idea of Pep's plans and also just how every team is lining up. And then if we get indication of Stones and Cancelo starting most games like they did last season, in the first half anyway, then I'd probably edge towards one of them two over Diaz. So it's just too many question marks at the moment. That's why I'm avoiding City and Chelsea defenders for the time being. Would you include a Brighton defender? And if so, who? Definitely Veltman, in my opinion, mate. Definitely Veltman. The reason why I haven't gone for him at the moment is just I already have Sanchez and a double up in Brighton and Liverpool defence. I prefer to kind of spread the risk in defence for the most part. but I might end up going for Veltman, to be honest. Start Veltman or Rafinha? I'd probably start Veltman. If you already have Sanchez starting, then you could just conceivably go for Rafinha, who is fixture-proof in my opinion. However, if it's just Veltman or Rafinha, who do you prefer? I'd say Veltman for Game Week 1. Will Son, Rafinha outscore Barnes, Greenwood? Besides, is Greenwood nailed Game Week 2 onwards? He's not nailed Game Week 2 onwards, to be honest. However, I prefer that Barnes-Greenwood duo for the beginning of the season, and then going forward, Son and Rafinha are better. What do you think about Barnes' fitness? I think he's fit enough to play. He's been looking really sharp anyways. And the thing with Brendan Rodgers' comments about Barnes, they've kind of been, I wouldn't say taken out of context, but if you read the full transcript, it's not as bad as people suggest. So I don't expect Barnes to complete a full 90 minutes. I think he's going to be eased in. However, I expect him to continue to start, and he might get 60, 70 minutes here and there in the tank, but it's enough for him to do damage. Sorry, I'm late to the party. No problem, fine Dutchman. I was late to the party myself. I was actually having problems with the stream key at the beginning, so yeah, there's no worries there. Barnes or Gundogan? I prefer Barnes, to be honest. I like Gundogan, but I'm just not so sure about him this season, and I prefer Mahrez from City. What about Cancelo? If I kind of got wind of him starting, then I would definitely be considering him, but he's just a constant rotation risk in my opinion. Thoughts about this team? Looking forward to another season with you. Thank you, William. Sanchez, Foster, Trent, Shaw, Soufal, Marty, Tsimikas, Salah, Fernandes, Greenwood, Barnes, Brownhill, Tony, Ings, Antonio. Fantastic team. It's obviously similar to a lot of ones that people have been talking about. I like Soufal, Shaw, Trent. I like the goalkeeper. Tsimikas is a good choice for the first few weeks. The kind of only problems I'd be highlighting to you is Amati is probably not going to be playing after Game Week 1, so just bear that in mind with the arrival of Vestergaard to Leicester City. You look at the midfield, I like it, it's pretty much the same as my midfield. Just bear in mind that in future Greenwood might start to be rotated, but for the time being it should be fine. Your front three is good. So mainly to be honest, the team is that good that the main problem is Amati and potentially Foster, because he could go down in price because of his ownership. So you could just go for Steele, and that's something I actually might end up doing myself. But yeah, the team is good, to be honest. I like it. Mahrez and Tony or Wilson and Ings? Good question, Dark Runner. Very good question. To begin the season, I'd probably say Wilson and Ings, but Mahrez is just so tempting, isn't he? So if you do go for the first duo, I completely understand. Linda says, rate my team: Sanchez, Foster, Trent, Tsimikas, Shaw, White, Andrew, Buendia, Rafinha, Salah, Bruno, Son, Tony, Antonio, Perica. Very good team. Not really any weaknesses there. Maybe kind of similar probably to the last team I just rated. The thing with having 2 4 million defenders is that you need to find money elsewhere, especially if you don't have money in the bank, to maybe upgrade one of them in future, especially when Tsimikas loses his spot. So that's one area of concern. Buendia is good for the first 3 game weeks, but beyond that, will he be too good? Not so sure. But he does cover Villa pretty well for the first 3 game weeks. But yeah, the rest is pretty good. Perica, he's a 4.5 million option anyway. There's not really any viable ones at the moment. So there's not really much else I can say about that. But Perica, I've been told by Watford fans that he's actually likely to move away from the club. So just worth keeping an eye on that situation. What do you think about Sanchez and Martinez? To be honest, in terms of goalkeepers, I've mainly been considering 3. And I've said this from the beginning. Sanchez, Bachmann and Martinez. And to be honest, with that extra million that you can save from going without Martinez, you could just go for Sanchez in my opinion. However, for the first 3 game weeks, I think Martinez could actually, be the highest scoring goalkeeper in the game by far. And even in those difficult games, he can get a clean sheet or 2 in there, get some save points, even save a penalty, get some bonus. So yeah, Martinez is still going to be up there in terms of point scorers. But is he worth 5.5 million? Probably is. But could you spend that money better elsewhere? In my opinion, you can. So I prefer Sanchez for that reason. Play Soufal or Tony? That's tough, man. I'd probably play Tony, but that's really tough. This is one of the reasons why I'm not too sure about Soufal starting him, because at least having him in my team right now, because I probably wouldn't start him in Game Week 1, but at the same time, he could easily do something against Newcastle, so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But Soufal long-term is a good pick. Tony's a good idea. I mean, you'd hope so. A lot of people do have him. But yeah, we'll wait and see. I'm torn between Jota and Greenwood. I'm leaning towards Jota, but I'm not certain if he'll start. That's the thing. Greenwood as well, don't get me wrong, he might not even start himself. They're both rotation risks. I just think for the first few game weeks, Greenwood's a bit more safe. He's got better fixtures from an attacking point of view. And yeah, it's just Liverpool, or should I say Man United, don't actually have any fixtures like Liverpool do, such as Chelsea, where in game week 3, if you have Jota and Salah and Trent potentially up against Chelsea, which is just not ideal. I'm leaning towards Greenwood, but yeah, there's no right or wrong there, as I've probably said 6 or 7 times today. Game week 1, Havertz. Game week 2, Havertz to Mahrez or Son. What do you think? I'm not a huge fan of booking in transfers, but in one of my draft videos, I actually described that exact same situation, and to be honest, it makes perfect sense. It could actually turn out very well. Just bear in mind that Havertz did play 120 minutes in the Super Cup final against Villarreal, so maybe Havertz doesn't even start or play the full 90 minutes, so it's a risk, but maybe it's worth taking. It's freakish playing. I always notice that whenever people type in Grealish, it auto-corrects to freakish. I think Grealish will play in Game Week 1. A lot of City fans believe that to be the case, but I just prefer Mahrez at this moment in time. And with Grealish, I need to wait and see more before committing to him. Son and Tony or Mahrez and Ings? Great question. I'll probably go for Mahrez and Ings, Ben, to be honest. Do I go Barnes and Tony or Wilson and Benrahma? That's tough, man. I'd probably go for Barnes and Tony, but that's literally 51-49 if anything. Do I go Barnes and Tony or Wilson and Benrahma? Yeah, answer that question, mate. Have you planned any transfers ahead? This is the thing. I have an idea of which transfers I would like to make, but nothing's booked in, and I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to book in transfers and wildcards and all of that. But what I am considering is, in the future, Barnes or Greenwood, depending on who's kind of being rotated more often, one of them being downgraded to Rafinha potentially, and using that extra money to either upgrade my defence or upgrade Ivan Toney to a 7.5 million striker. And also other transfers would include Danny Ings to maybe Patrick Bamford, especially after game week 3 when Villa have a bad fixture swing. And yeah, if not, Calvert-Lewin's another one I'm looking at. And Antonio, if he gets injured, I can always move him on to Iheanacho if he starts, or another 7.5 million striker. So there's different ways I can go about it. But I want to have a flexible squad. And ultimately, as I said before, if Harry Kane goes to Man City, or he starts to hit the ground running and has great fixtures, or same with Son, if Lukaku, once we enter game week 7, has those great set of fixtures, I might use my money, my remaining funds, to move players about in midfield and attack to get one of them in. So that's the good thing about having flexibility in your team. Yeah, Landro, please, no spamming, please. I don't want to put more people on timeout. Why is everyone getting on the Rafinha train when Harrison has better stats and is 0.5 million cheaper? Well, to be fair, the thing is, obviously Harrison did outscore Rafinha quite comfortably in the end, but Rafinha missed the first 7-8 game weeks, really, at least in terms of starts. Rafinha has better underlying stats. He's much more creative. In terms of goal threat, of course, Harrison does offer a bit more, but the difference isn't as big as it is with the creative stats between the two. There's no right or wrong there. No doubt about it. Harrison's slightly cheaper. He got 160 points last season and he's 6 million, so he is a good price. I'm not so sure, to be honest, with Harrison. Same with Rafinha at the moment, and that's the kind of good thing about not going with any of these players at the moment. You can assess them and then you can jump on one of them in the end. But yeah, Harrison should definitely be considered. We shouldn't be overlooking him, and you do raise a good point there. But there are reasons why Rafinha is kind of more rated as an asset. My team: Mahrez, Salah, Fernandes, Ings, Antonio. Which two to choose between Tony, Barnes, Greenwood? That looks good. That looks really good. If I had to pick two between those three, you say probably Barnes and Greenwood. To be honest, it looks really good though. Do you think Gundogan will start? I think so, Jake. I'm not as confident in Gundogan as I was before, but I still think he's a decent option. Tony or Sarr? I prefer Tony. I just think he's on penalties. He's the talisman for Brentford, and to be fair, Sarr is technically the talisman for Watford. But I think Tony's going to be more involved in all of the goals that Brentford score than Sarr will. Varane for match day 2, I wouldn't be going for Varane because you can just go for Wan-Bissaka or Luke Shaw from the defence. You can go for Greenwood and Bruno Fernandes in the midfield. So ultimately, I wouldn't be going for Varane. I just don't think he offers enough for his price. He surely will be coming in at a premium. What about Dallas? Look, I mean, his reclassification as a midfielder just puts me off him, to be honest. So at the moment, I'm not going with Dallas, and I just probably wouldn't be going for him unless I'm seeing something I like. He's still very good for Sky Fantasy Football, for example, but in FPL, not really thinking about it. How will you get to Lukaku if he plays well at the start? Well, as I said a few times before, the kind of plan with this team is to use the money with either Salah or Bruno going into Game Week 7, where Chelsea have a very good set of fixtures. If I like the look of Lukaku in Chelsea, I can move one of them on and then make another transfer up front and get Lukaku in. So that would be the kind of plan there. But of course, it's impossible to have a direct route, especially to all of these players. Son's another one, for example. You can't have every single player. And especially, for people who like to jump off and on different players at the right time, very unsustainable, very difficult to get right every single time. Of course, it is possible in one season, but to do it consistently every single year, not so sure. So there is a way to get Lukaku with this team, but of course it would include 2 transfers, and ultimately you can't have everyone, so you have to prioritise. And in the end, let's wait and see how Lukaku does. I think he'll do very well, but then again, he is 11.5 million, and if he was slightly cheaper, I'd be a bit more tempted. And remember, he's not starting in Game Week 1, as talked about by Tuchel. What are your thoughts about Rafinha? Worth to have him for the first 4 fixtures or what? I think it's worth it, and it kind of saves you a transfer further down the line. So don't get me wrong, it's worth having Rafinha. I just prefer other assets for the first 3-4 game weeks, and I can always move one of them on to Rafinha. So that's why I'm going without him at the moment. However, maybe a late change will involve getting in the Brazilian. Greenwood or Barnes? I'd probably just about say Barnes, although Greenwood, if he starts, might outscore him for the first 4 or 5 game weeks. Bro, should I spend more of my budget on the midfield or defence? It depends on how your squad is, Glenn, to be honest. It's difficult for me to just say generically if that's the case. If you think you're spending too much money in your attack and you're not liking your depth or you're not liking the rest of your starting lineup, then yeah, it's worth kind of reassessing and maybe spreading the money elsewhere. Jimenez, I think just mainly look at him from Game Week 4 onwards. There's no real hurry to get him in now. Should we consider Mbeumo at all? To be honest, at 5.5 million, I'd say him and Smith Rowe are the standouts. Maybe even Dallas, potentially, to be fair. So keep an eye on him. I think he could do really well, especially today. However, if you already have Ivan Toney, there's no need to double up on Brentford. And one thing I'll say to all of you who have 2 or 3 championship players, especially in attack, so midfield and attack, maybe be a bit cautious about that and try to limit the amount of players you have from promoted teams. But Mbeumo is one of the best at 5.5 million in my opinion. What's your reasoning for not being confident in Gundogan? The reasoning why is because even though he's getting into good positions, even though De Bruyne is missing out for the first few game weeks, De Bruyne will be back at some point. So will Foden, so will Grealish. There's going to be a lot of rotation in midfield and on the wings. So ultimately with Gundogan, when that happens, even if he does continue to start, I think he's going to be playing more of a defensive role. So with Gundogan, I look at last season, I look at the numbers, I look at how he played. I can see elements of that carrying on to this season. I can see him scoring quite a few goals and getting a few assists, but not to the same degree. So is he worth 7.5 million? Maybe not. And also you look at the other options at 7.5, 7 million. I just think they're superior, at least for the time being. And from Manchester City, Mahrez is the standout, especially in midfield. So that's kind of my reasoning behind it. Barnes not starting, bro. I mean, I don't know where you got that from, but if you can link me to that, I'd greatly appreciate it. But yeah, of course, all of these players, there's kind of a problem with having every single one of them, believe it or not, even Bruno. But yeah, do you think El Ghazi will start? I think he will start 2 out of these next 3 game weeks at least, but it's impossible to tell you if he definitely will or not. And he's actually been rumoured with a move away from Aston Villa. I'm torn. You definitely deserve more viewers, subscribers. Thank you very much, Flying Dutchman. Really appreciate it. But I also want my questions answered. Yeah, it's kind of a difficult balance, isn't it? Because, there's 100 people now. The chat is very active. So it's difficult to get through all the questions, unfortunately. But yeah, I completely get that. I feel the same way, to be honest. Yeah, Joe, as I said before with Jimenez, wait until Game Week 4, in my opinion. Hopefully you got that. Iheanacho, he will play. Yeah, that's true. With Iheanacho's heroics in the Community Shield, maybe he will play at the expense of Harvey Barnes. But Harvey Barnes had a very good performance anyway. I think he was their best player before Iheanacho came on and stole the limelight. So that's kind of the main problem with Harvey Barnes. I completely understand that. So it's a risk going with him, but a risk potentially worth taking. He's very explosive, very good fixtures, relatively low ownership. I think he can do very well. Why is everyone picking Barnes? I don't think everyone is picking him, mate. He is owned by, well, the last time I checked, he was owned by around 12% of the game. Antonio or Calvert-Lewin, I'd probably go for Antonio. However, if Everton, start to show a bit of form, their players start to come back, there's no players isolating, then Calvert-Lewin could be the better pick in the medium to long term. Is Trent a must-have? I think he's the closest to a must-have you can get in defence, but he's not essential. To answer your question in short, I think the closest to essential from all players, Jesus, my voice is cracking, is Mohamed Salah, to be honest. Is Target a good choice? Yes, but I'm worried about the rotation with Ashley Young. What do you think about Saka? With Arsenal, I'll mainly be looking at Pepe in midfield, potentially Smith Rowe, although I'm not too keen on him. Maybe Balogun as your kind of budget striker, although I wouldn't probably go for it myself. Ben White in defence. Other than that, not too sure. Maybe Tierney, if he can, stay fit. I wouldn't be going for Saka though. Saka or Benrahma? Benrahma for me, Jesse. Is it worth avoiding Obafemi in case he goes on loan somewhere? Although the last I heard is he rejected the move. Should I go to Perica, Scarlett, etc.? The thing is, those two strikers, especially Perica, he's been linked with a move away as well. Scarlett could go on loan potentially, and even if he doesn't, is he going to really be picking up 1 or 2 points often? So to be honest, all of the 4.5 million strikers, they're not really offering anything, at least not offering security of starts or certainty. Otherwise, they kind of be game breaking in a way. But yeah, I get your concerns about that. Obafemi is potentially going to be moving away, and that's why I'm not too keen on having two strikers as well. I just don't like the 4.5 million strikers this year. Son instead of Ings, nothing wrong with that. Son is potentially a better option, definitely in the long term. For the first 3 game weeks, however, Ings should comfortably outscore him, at least on paper. Trent must have, not in my opinion. However, he is the best defender in the game in my opinion. Who to bench, Tierney, Creswell or Tsimikas? I'd probably bench Tierney or Creswell, and I'd probably bench Tierney. Is Buendia a good idea? I like the sound of that, mate. Jamie McCormack. Good idea for the first 3 game weeks. Beyond that, not in my opinion. Buendia or Barnes? I prefer Barnes TC, but Barnes is technically a rotation risk, especially with Patson Daka and Iheanacho coming to the fray. Play Amati or Veltman? Probably in game week 1 Amati, especially if you have Sanchez in goal already, but beyond that, just bear in mind Amati will probably not play with Vestergaard arriving at Leicester City. Lingard, no, not for me. He probably won't start for Manchester United, so no, not for me. Triple captain Salah, there's nothing, you know what, I wouldn't say no to that. I'm not going to be going for it myself though. This is what D Smith Games says. Hey man, DCL, Antonio, Ings, Tony, pick 3. Look, if you had the money and you're happy with the rest of your team, then I go for the first 3 names you said, DCL, Antonio and Ings. However, if that extra 1.5 million will do you a lot of good elsewhere, then just go for Antonio, Ings and Tony and use that DCL money to improve the rest of your squad. Is El Ghazi a good choice in midfield? Decent differential potentially, but too many kind of rotation. Yeah, I'd say rotation risk, could move away from Aston Villa. He is on penalties though, so long as he's on the pitch. Thanks for answering my question. Best of luck for the season. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ralph, hopefully I got your name right. Apologies if I didn't. And yeah, good luck with the season as well. Buendia, Brownhill, Benrahma. Pick 2, please. Well, Brownhill would only be kind of a budget option, to be honest. So if this is to start, Jamie, then I go for Buendia and Benrahma. Can I use Tielemans as a gamble? I honestly wouldn't go for it because from Leicester City for around $1 million more, you can get Harvey Barnes. So I wouldn't do that. Saka or Xhaka? Saka, but I wouldn't go for either of them. Soufal and Amati or Veltman and Ayling? Very good question, to be honest. I mean, because Amati will probably not be an option going into game week 2 onwards, I'd probably just go for Veltman and Ayling. They rotate pretty decently, especially when you look at the fixtures from game weeks 3 onwards. What about Che Adams? With Southampton and Armstrong, I need to see more. So not yet. Thanks for the replies, bro. No problem, Glenn. I try my best. Havertz and Basuma or Barnes and Benrahma? Very good question. I'd go for Barnes and Benrahma, but if you already have 3 strikers and 4 midfielders, then you don't have to have Barnes and Benrahma, but I think that's the better duo. Why Tony over Benrahma? I just think he's nailed for the whole time. Benrahma could actually be the kind of like-for-like replacement for Lingard, to be fair. But what I like about Tony is he's on penalties, good fixtures to start the season, at least for the first 4 or 5 game weeks. Should be getting bonus points, involved in most of the goals that Brentford will score, and he's a safe pick. But with Benrahma, he's a differential. He's playing for a good team, a better team than Brentford in West Ham. Very good fixtures to start the season. But then again, I've already got Antonio myself, so those kind of reasonings for Tony, and also having Antonio is why at the moment I'm not going for him. Son or Ings? I'd go for Ings for the first 3 game weeks, but beyond that, Son is probably the better option. What's the best squad with Salah, Bruno and Kane for the future? I mean, that would, if you look at my team, for example, that would require either downgrading Trent Alexander-Arnold or Barnes or Greenwood to a budget defender, and I'm talking real budget, and then you can upgrade potentially Danny Ings to Harry Kane. But yeah, I wouldn't look too far ahead at this moment in time. The main thing really is having Salah and Bruno, and then using one of them to potentially move to Lukaku, Son, or Harry Kane in the future. Do you recommend Soufal? I think at 5 million he's the best option. I've said this multiple times. I think he's the best option at 5 million. However, you can always just go for 2 4.5 million rotating defenders. You can go for Tsimikas in defence as well. Triple captain Salah Game Week 1 based on his recent stats versus Norwich. Fair enough, but stats aren't everything. They give you a good indication, but it doesn't always turn out the way you expect. He might haul. He might get 6 to 8 points, but maybe you could use a triple captaincy in a double game week or triple game week, or just there might be a better fixture down the line potentially. Especially Norwich are going to be at home. That kind of sways it a bit. If Salah was at home, then maybe I'd be a bit more tempted. What was your final ranking in FPL the last 2 seasons? Well, it's ironic that you say the last 2 seasons because I've only really been playing for 2 seasons. And my first season, I believe I finished 68k. And last season, I finished 55k. And then UCL Fantasy, another game I play, I finished around 20, 30k in my first season. And last season, I finished in the top 4 to 3k. I'll be honest, I can't remember. And in Euro 2020 Fantasy Football, I finished around 47k in the end. So those are my ranks, really. I'm not too bothered about ranks, as such. But I'm looking to improve if possible. And if not, at least we'll have a laugh. Hey Dylan, I'm conflicted between Son or Mahrez, or spreading the funds to get Tony, Greenwood and Soufal. Do you have any advice? Yeah, okay, look, so my advice would be, if you don't have Bruno and Salah, then I would maybe suggest not spreading the funds as such. However, if you do have Bruno and Salah and you're still thinking of spreading the funds in such a way, then I would be tempted by Mahrez, at least for the beginning. And if not, just get Tony, Greenwood and Soufal in there. But yeah, I'd probably say Mahrez would be my kind of, the standout pick for the first few game weeks, who's kind of middle, I'd say medium to elite bracket in terms of price. But yeah, if not, you can always just spread it around to Tony, Greenwood and Soufal. But the main thing for you, in my opinion, is getting Bruno and Salah in there, which I'm assuming you do. Target or cash? Normally I'd say target, but because of the rotation risk, maybe cash is slightly better. What do you think of DCL? I think DCL will start the season well, but I'm just not too sure about Everton. Too many question marks, especially with the 5 players missing out. So Everton could be affected in a negative way. There are other options with better fixtures, at least for the first 3 or 4 game weeks. Obviously, long term, Everton have the best fixtures, but you don't have to go with him. Mount or Gundogan? Out of those two, I prefer Gundogan, especially because of the fixtures. However, I prefer Greenwood, Jota, Barnes, and also Mahrez, for example, if you can get to him. Bro, thanks for the reply. I appreciate it. Thank you, D Smith Games. I try my best. Obviously, it gets more difficult with the more people that come in, but I try my best. Do I put Soufal? If you're looking for a 5 million defender, definitely. However, you don't have to have a 5 million defender, especially if you have Shaw or Digne or Trent or Chilwell or whoever you may have. Salah or Mane? Mane has been scoring in the recent games. What do you say? I prefer Salah. He's on penalties. He's more of a consistent goal scorer than Mane. Better underlying stats. Yeah, I just prefer Salah. Are you nervous with the start of the season? From an Arsenal perspective, yes, but from an FPL perspective, the only kind of nerves I have in a way is, getting some of these 50-50 decisions wrong, because you want to start well, you want to have a good, solid, flexible squad, and being able to kind of change things in just one or two moves and not having to take massive hits to get players like Lukaku, Son, Kane, etc., who might come into our thinking later in the season. But I'm more excited than anything. I'm not nervous, but I want to get these decisions right for sure. Son or Mahrez? I prefer Mahrez for the start of the season, Bishan. I've got the money for Greenwood, but I am reluctant to get rid of Rafinha. Thoughts? Honestly, mate, I would probably start Greenwood for the first few game weeks, and then, when Rafinha's fixtures turn better, you can always get him back in. He might go up in price to 6.7, 6.8 million, but it's fine. So could Greenwood, to be fair. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. I'd probably start with Greenwood, in my opinion. Barnes or Rafinha? Look, if you're confident in Barnes starting, I just go with him for the start, and then you can always downgrade to Rafinha later on. Rafinha, Mahrez, or Son or Barnes? I'm not sure if that's a duo, so is it Rafinha and Mahrez or Son or Barnes? But look, out of those four players, if I had to pick one, probably Mahrez actually, if you had enough money. But if it's a duo, to be honest, I'd probably... Oh, that's tough. That's really tough. I'd probably go for Son and Barnes long term, if that's a duo. You can clarify that later if I got that wrong. Tony and Barnes or Mahrez and Mbeumo? I'd go for Tony and Barnes, Jacob. Antonio or Wilson? Antonio, just about. But yeah, I think Wilson could potentially start the season better than Antonio. However, I just prefer Antonio and West Ham long term. I'm confused between Pepe or Gundogan or Greenwood. Completely understandable. They're all in a way rotation risks, especially Pepe and Greenwood. I would go for Greenwood. Best 4 million defender, not Tsimikas. For game week 1, I'd say Amati. I expect him to start in game week 1. However, going forward, Amati probably won't be playing, so you're probably looking at Andrew from Norwich City. His surname begins with O. I don't want to butcher the name completely. I think there is a way of saying it. It's not that difficult. I'll probably practice, over the next few weeks or something. 6.5 million forward and 7 million midfielder, or 7.5 million forward and 6 million midfielder. That's tough. Probably 6.5 million forward and 7 million midfielder, because you can get Tony and Barnes, for example, Jake, instead of let's say Callum Wilson and Harrison. But there's nothing wrong with that, to be fair. But I'd go for the first set. Not sure you answered this question yet, says the Flying Dutchman. Thoughts on doubling up on Steele plus Sanchez? Yeah, I mean, that's something I may do. The main thing I might change before the deadline is in regards to the bench. So Brownhill could become Gilmore, Foster could become Steele. And then there could be a few other changes in there as well, especially regarding Tony, maybe one of Barnes or Greenwood, but the rest should stay the same. But yeah, I've definitely thought about it, and it's a very good question you raised there. Foster could go down in price. You look at his ownership, a lot of people will be getting him in because he's got FPL experience, he's been in the Premier League before. But ultimately, if people see he doesn't start, Backman's going to continue starting, then people are going to be selling Foster, and then he's going to be going down in price very, very quickly. So that's something worth mentioning. Batter says Barnes or Benrahma. As I said before, Barnes. Please don't spam the chat. There's no reason to spam the chat. I will be going through your question as soon as possible. Can I ask, where did you rank last year, says Fergus? I ranked 55k last year, and in UCL Fantasy I finished around 3k, so hopefully you got that. Bowen or Benrahma? I prefer Benrahma. Calvert-Lewin, good option, but I'm not going to be going for him, at least for the time being. Soufal or Cancelo? I'd probably go for Soufal because he's more nailed. Is Saka a good choice? He's decent. However, you're looking at 6.5 million. I think Rafinha is a superior player in terms of FPL. Barnes or Tony, says Sondri. I'd go for Barnes out of those two, but Tony, more nailed, probably a safer pick, to be honest. Thoughts on Jota? Will he start? I think he will start in game week 1, but in game week 2, not so sure. Then you look at game week 3, very poor fixture against Chelsea, so you don't have to go for him. Well, will it start game week 1? Very good question, Darren. He has been training, he's been doing pre-season with Arsenal, so assuming he gets registered in time, I think he's going to make it, at least on the bench. If he isn't though, this is something Steve Bruce said, by the way, in his press conference. If not, he's going to be obviously fit and available and registered for game week 2. So just bear that in mind. He might not be registered in time for game week 1. So maybe it's risky to go with him. Shaw, Trent, Rudiger, Tsimikas, which one to drop for game week 1? Tough one. Look, I think Rudiger has the best chance of a clean sheet out of all those players you mentioned. However, if you look at the fixtures all the way up until game week 7, yeah, I mean, you could just go without him. So I'd probably say Rudiger out of those lot, if not Tsimikas. Greenwood, Barnes, Fernandes, Salah, Benrahma have 0.5 million. Which, should I switch someone? You don't have to be honest. You know what? I'd probably start with that team, if anything. Don't overcomplicate it, Tobias. And you can always, around game week 3, if not game week 5, move Benrahma to Rafinha, that 0.5 million. Of course, you know, there could be price rises for Rafinha and same with Benrahma, so that could change. But that's something worth considering. You can do Benrahma to Rafinha in a few weeks' time. Sanchez, Soufal, Trent, Shaw, Mahrez, Salah, Fernandes, Buendia, Barnes, Tony, and Antonio. Says Surya. Yeah. I like that team. Trying to pick out something I don't like. Maybe Buendia after game week 3, but the rest of it looks very solid. To be honest, yeah, it's a solid team. Thanks, Tom, for the reply. All the best, everyone. Thank you, Nikhil, and all the very best of luck to you as well. Best 4 million options: Steele, Foster, Gillespie, or Ward. To be honest, who is the most likely to start out of those is Foster. And I think he will if Bachmann has a run of bad games. However, the chances of that happening are unlikely. So therefore, you know, maybe Steele is. So Foster is the most likely to play. And if he does, he's the best 4 million option, no doubt about it. However, if he doesn't, Steele is probably just the best one. You can have him and Sanchez. And then if something happens to Sanchez, until the second keeper comes back for Brighton, Steele will be coming in. Best 5.5 million midfielder, I'd say Mbeumo or Smith Rowe, in my opinion. Din Guima. Is Tierney a good pick? I'm highly considering him. I'm benching game week 2 and 3. Look, he's a decent option. He's someone I highlighted in an article for Fantasy Football Hub talking about the best Arsenal players. The main problem with him, though, is he's injury prone. So ultimately, if you're asking me, at 5 million, Soufal's the best option. So I'd go for him instead. Otherwise, Tierney's probably the second or third best pick at 5 million. So he's someone he's a good pick. He's worth having, even benching for game weeks 2 and 3. But I'm just not so sure when you can just get Soufal, who probably offers more attacking threat in FPL terms. Jota or Greenwood? At the moment, Simon, I'm going for Greenwood. Why Barnes over Benrahma? I think Barnes is more consistent. He offers more attacking threat. If you look, Benrahma, for example, I know he didn't play a lot last season, but he only scored 1 goal. He got 6 assists, to be fair. Didn't play many minutes, tended to come on from the bench. He should be taking Lingard's place. So Benrahma's appeal is definitely, you know, increased. He's been having a very good preseason, but so has Barnes. And yeah, Barnes not only poses some very good underlying stats, but you know, he's a decent finisher. And he can get some assists. You know, he overperformed last season with his assists. I think he had an expected assists of around 2.6, but he got 5 in the end. However, yeah, I just prefer Barnes. He's more consistent long term. I think so long as he can start, he should be a better asset. But you know, I completely get your kind of reservations about it. Bowen or Benrahma? I'd go for Benrahma. Barnes or Harrison? I'd go for Barnes for the time being. Antonio and Rafinha or Ings and Benrahma? I'd go for Antonio and Rafinha probably. This is looking long term. Otherwise, you know, if you're looking at the first 3 game weeks, Ings and Benrahma is better. Best replacement for Arnold, since I have Tsimikas, Shaw, Veltman. Who are the 2 good options? Look, so if you're going without Trent and you're trying to spread the money around, you could maybe consider a City defender. So Diaz or Stones or Cancelo. Diaz would be the safest pick there. If you're not really willing to spend that much money in your defence, Digne is still an option. However, the 5 players isolating Everton's form in pre-season kind of puts some doubts in my mind. So I'd probably say Soufal is probably one of the best ones you can go for, and a City defender. And if not, you can just go for a 4.5 million defender such as Ben White, or Ayling. So that's what I'd go for, mate. Bench Benrahma or Reece James, Digne, Tsimikas? Good question. I'd probably bench. I mean, to be honest, how do you bench someone from those lot? Jesus, that's really tough. Maybe Tsimikas, especially if you already have Trent, Stam. Play Soufal or Benrahma? I'd probably play Benrahma. I think West Ham have a better chance of scoring than keeping a clean sheet. However, if they score, will it be Benrahma involved? Who knows? Barnes or Greenwood? I prefer Barnes just about, but then again, they're both rotation risks, so bear that in mind. Thinking of doing a 7.5 million midfielder merry-go-round. Start with Pepe, go Gundogan, Torres, game week 2, back to Pepe, game week 4 for our good run. Also, really want to own Greenwood. Heard Leeds have some injuries. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, and that's actually one thing that might put me off Ayling. Leeds, if you look at them actually, Diego Llorente is out and we don't know how long exactly, or at least I don't know how long he's out for, and Diego Llorente was crucial in Leeds United's defensive resurgence in the second half of last season. And the injuries you mentioned, there's other injuries that Leeds have. They're looking a bit frail at the back. I think they actually might struggle at the beginning, so that's why you can go without Bamford and Rafinha as well. So yeah, having Greenwood makes perfect sense. So yeah, maybe rotating around the 7.5 million midfielders makes sense. I'm thinking of something similar, downgrading Barnes or Greenwood to Rafinha. Should I start Sarr over Matt Target Soufal? I probably would, Grape. Yeah, I probably would do that. Maguire or Target? Look, if you're going for a United defender, I just go for Shaw or Wan-Bissaka over Maguire. I think Maguire gets too many yellow cards. Wan-Bissaka is more likely to get bonus points because of that. And Luke Shaw creates so many chances. So if he gets a clean sheet or an assist, then he's going to be right in there with some big hauls. So I'd go for one of them instead. So yeah, that's my opinion. 4-4-2 to 4-3-4-3. No right answer with formations. What I would recommend, this is my opinion, is try to have 4 playing defenders at least. So even if you have a fifth who doesn't play at all, that's fine. But you can always have Tsimikas, for example, as your fifth 4 million defender. And I try to aim to have 3 midfielders at least, but I'd probably say 4. 4 good midfielders and 2 strikers. So that's what I'd say. But you can always change it about. Sometimes you can have 3-4-3. Sometimes you can have 4-4-2. It doesn't matter. But ultimately, the fixtures and the players are the most important, not the formation. That's just a consequence of your decision making. Why do you have Rafinha in your team? I don't, Kurt. I don't have Rafinha. I have Ayling on my bench, but I don't have Rafinha. Mahrez and Greenwood or Son and Rafinha? I'd probably say Mahrez and Greenwood actually, but very good shouts, Dara. Best 5 million or less defender? I'd say Soufal, probably. Yeah, I'd say Soufal for sure, Ketin. Mahrez and Barnes or Gundogan and Jota? I'd go for Mahrez and Barnes. Chris El Famoso, thank you for joining in once again, really appreciate it. Start Amati or Soufal? I just start Amati because if he doesn't start, he shouldn't really be coming on, you'd think anyway. And I just don't know if Soufal will keep a clean sheet in game week 1. So I think Leicester more likely, therefore I'd start Amati. But going forward, I don't expect Amati to start. Why Tsimikas? The reason why is because I'm not looking to triple up with Liverpool unless I get Jota. But because of game week 3 against Chelsea, not so sure about Liverpool double up in attack. Then I look at the other options in midfield compared to Jota. There's more options I can go for. However, with 4 million defenders, with Amati, his spot is going to be in jeopardy following Vestergaard's arrival at Leicester City. So, you know, who else can you get for 4 million, at least for the first few game weeks? I think Tsimikas is a no-brainer. I don't like defensive double-ups too much, but, you know, I'll be going for Tsimikas, I think. And, yeah, you know, there's arguments for and against. There's definitely no... I wouldn't say you have to have Tsimikas, definitely not, but it's a good opportunity, and if he doesn't turn out, you know, you can always bench him, or if not, just make a transfer or 2 and get rid of him. But I get your reservations about it as well. Buendia was training. Will he start? He's available. Dean Smith didn't say will he start or not, but I think he will. Don't hold me to that though. It's just my opinion. Mahrez or Sancho? Definitely Mahrez for now. Are you not afraid of Son? You can't have everyone, Joseph. That's the thing. That's the mentality I have at the moment. You can't have everyone, so you can't be afraid of having this guy or not having him. You know, if I have Son, that would mean not having Bruno potentially, or downgrading one of my defenders like Trent or other midfielders, or maybe even one of my strikers. So you can't have everyone. Hello Dylan, last time I was here was the Euros. How have you been? Yeah, I mean, same here to be fair. It's my first stream since the Euros. Everything is good. Hopefully you are doing well too. And all the very best of luck to you as well. Why not Jota anymore? And Chilwell. With Chilwell, I was expecting a bit more from him in terms of starting in pre-season. Marcus Alonso and Emerson, you know, they're still at the club. Chilwell could start in game week 1 to be fair, but I don't know. Also, what happened since the recording of my video, and this is, you know, typical, you know, whenever you record a video or do a live stream, is the arrival of Tsimikas. So when I recorded my video, Robertson wasn't actually injured, I believe. So, you know, that completely changed everything. And just playing around with team structures with Tsimikas just kind of inclined me to go with him instead and spreading the funds elsewhere. But, you know, you can go with either one of them. And sure, still a good option. He could start in game week 1, but just not so sure. Thoughts on Digne? He's still a good option. Him and Dominic Calvert-Lewin are the ones you want to have from Everton. But ultimately, if I'm being honest, I just think at 5.5 million you can get Luke Shaw. At 5 million you can get Soufal. I have more confidence in them nearly at least nearly matching his goal and assist output, Luca Digne's output, and defensively United and West Ham are better than Everton, if not very similar levels. So yeah. Barnes is fit, bro. Yeah, he is. I mean, I've seen some people saying, he might not be, but we'll see. Hey man, loving the content. Thank you, Digor. Ayling and Harrison from Leeds for 10.5 million, or Manquillo, Amati and Rafinha. I mean, to be honest, from 4 million, I'd say Tsimikas, then Amati for Game Week 1 at least. Otherwise, you're mainly looking at Andrew from Norwich, or maybe Manquillo. I'd probably just go for the first set, Ayling and Harrison. Thoughts on Vardy? Very good option for Game Week 1, but I just probably wouldn't go for him. You can always just have other placeholders in your team like Bruno Fernandes and make a few transfers there. Your general thoughts on Sancho? I haven't shown too much interest in him because he might not even start tomorrow. You have Greenwood and Bruno available, and I think they're going to be the two kind of main goal scorers at the moment, or at least involved in the most goals for the first few game weeks when they start. So yeah, with Sancho, it's a wait and see. He could be someone coming into my thinking in the future, but right now, not so sure. Salah is a must. He's the closest to a must we have, in my opinion. Glad to be back watching these streams and can't wait for the season, and let's hope it's the best one for many here. Best of luck all. Thank you very much, Dylan, and all the very best of luck to you as well. Why is nobody talking about Sancho? To be fair, Mohammed, a lot of people are, and you can go for him. If you're confident, go for him. But ultimately, I just think I'm going to wait. Greenwood or Son? I'd say Greenwood to start the season. Long term, Son would be the better pick. Sancho might not play, he will probably be on the bench. Exactly, Jag. That's exactly why I'm not really going for him at the moment. Thoughts on Ferran Torres, mate? From Man City, I'd be looking at either Mahrez, he'd be my first pick in midfield, if not Gundogan or Grealish. But yeah, Ferran Torres, I'm just not so sure. It could be Gabriel Jesus starting up front. On the right, it will probably be Mahrez. On the left, it will probably be Grealish. And then Foden's going to be back in 2 to 3 weeks. Kevin De Bruyne will be coming into the mix. He could play false nine. So yeah, Ferran Torres, I wouldn't go for him in my opinion. Why don't you have Soufal anymore? He seems like a great choice. I mean, I'm not too confident in Soufal in Game Week 1, but to be honest, very soon I might be tinkering with my team and getting Soufal in and maybe downgrading one of my other players. So, this isn't completely locked in by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, I'll be answering a few final questions, I believe. And then I'll probably wrap up, and then I'll try to post a picture on the YouTube community tab of my final team. So if you subscribe to the channel and you like the video, turn on notifications, you can see what my final team is in the end. And just it's very important to kind of have a clear head, especially at the beginning of the season. You want to get things right. But yeah, I might actually do that. Saint Maximan's an underrated pick. I had him last season actually at the beginning, and I just didn't like him personally. I prefer Willock when he's available and Callum Wilson. Is Buendia injured? Genius Gamer asks. He's actually available. Does that mean he's going to start? I'm not so sure, but he's available. That's said by Dean Smith in a press conference today. I'd rather have Benrahma over Toney. Completely understand that. He's also, got less ownership, plays in a better team, and had a great pre-season. But to be fair, so did Toney. Great stream as always, Dylan. Good luck for the season. Thank you, Steve. All the very best of luck to you as well, mate. Greenwood or Mount? Definitely Greenwood for me, Haresh. Trent, Benrahma, Toney, or Greenwood, Soufal, Ings? Very, very good question. I'd probably go for the second set of players, to be honest, but they're both very good. Yazid. Thoughts on Havertz for Game Week 1? I'm a bit put off by the fact he played 120 minutes the other day, but I think he's a good option for Game Week 1. He should start, and I think he'll do well. Beyond that, though, don't really like him. Welcome, Baron. Thank you for joining in. Bowen or Sarr? I'd probably go for Sarr. And if you want someone from West Ham in midfield, I'd probably go for Benrahma. Barnes and Ings or Greenwood and Wilson? Great question. That's really tough, to be honest. I'd probably say Barnes and Ings, at least for the first 3 game weeks. Mount or Havertz, considering Havertz played 120 minutes in the Super Cups. That's true. Mount got substituted a bit earlier than that. I probably would... You know what? I think Havertz is a bit more explosive. I prefer him for Game Week 1. Obviously, barring the 120 minutes. But I don't like either of them too much, to be honest, because of those circumstances. I'd still probably go for Havertz, but I'm not too confident about that. Best 4.5 million defender? Probably Veltman. Yeah, probably Veltman. I might actually go for him in the end, but yeah, I think him. If not, I'd say Ayling or Ben White. Those are probably my top 3. Toney Amares or Greenwood and Barnes? That's tough. I'd probably say Greenwood and Barnes, but not much in that. Son or Greenwood? Greenwood to start the season, mate. Mahrez or Son? Mahrez to start the season. This is a fresh start. Indeed it is, Baron. Do you think Mane is a good differential? He is, but then again, if you already have Salah, a double up against Chelsea in game week 3, also captaincy headaches every single week, and also, it probably prevents you from having Bruno Fernandes. I'd probably just go for Bruno and Salah and forget about Mane. That's my personal opinion, though. Nothing wrong with having him. Press the like button. Dylan deserves it. Thank you, Sondre. Really appreciate it. And hope to see you on more streams in the future as well. Why not Everton play in your team based on fixtures? Because they have 5 players out who are isolating, and one of them is James Rodriguez. Calvert-Lewin has just come back from an injury, so even if he does start, which isn't completely guaranteed, is he going to be at his best? We don't know. Everton have been looking very poor in pre-season, and ultimately, I just don't trust Everton too much, either offensively or defensively, to invest in their assets. So it's a wait and see at the moment. I might jump on them in the few weeks, but at the moment I'm probably going to go without them. Tierney or James? I'd probably say Reece James, but I think he's rotation risk, so I'd go for Soufal. I think he's the best 5 million option. Greenwood or Havertz? I'd go for Greenwood. Thanks for the stream, Dylan. Have a good one. Thank you, Flying Dutchman. Really appreciate it, mate. And always good to see you on these streams. Saka versus Brentford or Barnes versus Wolves? Currently on Barnes. That's tough. Barnes versus Wolves. Barnes versus Wolves. Ings plus Veltman, Benrahma plus Tony. Like I said, I'm not really too bothered about the formation, in my opinion. That's tough, man. That's really tough. I mean, long term, I prefer, or at least for the first 3-4 game weeks, I prefer Ings and Veltman combination. However, for game week 1, maybe the second duo does better. I just prefer the first one. I'd go for Ings and Veltman. I agree, Tobias. No need to spam. I start with Buendia and Ings. Plan to swap them for Rafinha and other striker after game week 3. Any thoughts on the plan? Nothing wrong with doubling up on the attack, especially, Villa have promise. However, it's a new team. They need time to gel. Both of them are new signings, so it is potentially risky. You could maybe go elsewhere. However, there's nothing wrong with that. And like you said, you're going to be going for someone else in the end. Foster or Steele as backup? Foster's the most likely to be getting minutes, or at least, getting some starts, especially if Bachmann, has a poor set of games. However, he's also susceptible to price drops. And with Steele, you have pretty much the backup keeper for Brighton until the second keeper comes back. So maybe Steele is, but yeah. Do you value double attack from the same team, like Antonio and Benrahma? I do value it, especially if it's a team, that are showing promise and, they're looking really good in the future. But in general, I prefer to spread the risk. However, one, double up in attack is actually fine, in my opinion. Is Greenwood a must? Not a must. He's not a must. You can go for Jota, you can go for Barnes, you can go for Rafinha. There's other players you can go for, but he's a good player. Why Greenwood over Rafinha? Better fixtures. Leeds have a lot of injuries. Greenwood should start the first few weeks. United have a lot of injuries in the attack, but Leeds do in the defence. So I just back Greenwood to outscore Rafinha for the first few. Then I can always move Greenwood down to Rafinha. Soufal or Tony? I'd go for... That's tough. I'd go for Tony for game week 1. But no need to spam the chat, mate. No need to spam. Force on Bertrand. I'd probably, from Leicester... Yeah, I mean, he's a decent price. I think he's 5 million, but I don't know. I think with Leicester defence, it's really a Marty for game week 1 and for Farnham potentially when he comes back. But otherwise, I'm just not really looking at the defence. Tony or Buendia. For game week 1, yeah, you'd probably say Buendia, but I would go for Tony. And yeah, Buendia obviously has the better fixture, but Tony I think will do well. Yeah, thanks Dylan. Good info as usual. All the best. Thank you, Clifford. I really appreciate it, mate. And thank you to everyone who is watching the video. Really appreciate it. Just sent the university senior thesis. Now time to take a look at my team. Damn, Jose Manuel. Hopefully that went well. And all the very best of luck with university. And yeah, now time to look at the team. The more important thing, in a way. Soufal or Tony? Yeah, I already answered that question, mate. No need to spam the chat. Barnes or Grealish? Barnes. Can I sub off Tony halfway through the game week? You can't, mate. It's not like UCL Fantasy or Euro Fantasy Football. What you have on your bench is, what's going to come on in the exact order as well. Best 6 to 6.5 million midfielder other than Rafinha? I'd say either Harrison or Benrahma, I'd say. And probably at the moment, I'd say Benrahma, Legolas. Back 3 or Shaw, Diaz, Simicast. That's solid. Try to have one good option on your bench as well, defensively. But otherwise, that's good. Pepe or Barnes for game week 1. I think Pepe might outscore Barnes in game week 1, but I still prefer having Barnes from the get-go. Just seen from Twitter from Z from Zed, if you know who that is, that apparently Balogun starts today. Have more faith in our youngsters than our seniors right now. Like when we beat Slavia. Yeah, I agree. And Balogun at 5 million could actually do really well today. So bear that in mind, guys. That could be really good. Thanks, lad, for your... I really appreciate you very much. I've been following your streams since last season. Thank you very much, mate. And hope to see you in more streams. If you do use your fantasy, remember, I also cover that as well with videos and live streams. And once I come back from holiday, hopefully more content as well. I've been very busy recently, unfortunately, but I'll be trying to get the content up. Can I sub off Tony? Yeah, I'll answer that, sorry. Gundogan or Mahrez? I prefer Mahrez, mate. I need 2 out of Benrahma, Barnes and Rafinha. Which one? I'd go for Benrahma and Barnes to start the season, to be honest. Buen dia or good day? Buen dia for sure. Somalia or Kenya? I'm not going to choose between countries. I know people from both of them, actually. So, yeah. Harrison or Rafinha? I still prefer Rafinha, but don't overlook Harrison. Gundogan or Mahrez? Yeah, Mahrez. Thoughts on Havertz? Good option for Game Week 1 potentially, but 120 minutes the other day. Poor fixtures until Game Week 7, so I'd probably just avoid at the moment. Tony or Buendia? I'd probably go for Tony. Greenwood or Sancho? Greenwood. Dini or Tony? Tony. I don't think Dini will actually start most games, to be honest, so Tony is nailed. I'd go for him. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll try to answer more questions and all of that, but thank you everyone who has been watching. And yeah, in future deadline streams, I will try to have one for Game Week 2, but like I said, I am going on holiday, so it's going to be very difficult to fit that in. But if I can, I'll be doing a deadline stream. I'll also be trying to be recording more videos for you lot, and then I can answer more of your questions as well. But now I'm off to relax and to hopefully just finalize my team. And remember, if you subscribe to the channel, you can see my final team in the community tab. I'm going to be posting an image of my final team, and you can see what I've decided. But thank you very much for everyone who's been tuning in. We've had over 100 viewers for pretty much the whole stream, so really appreciate it. And can't believe at the beginning, I had trouble with the streams, but it is what it is. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I post content there as well. You can talk to me about football and FPL as well. Dylan_RCM. And remember to join the league. The link is in the description below. You can join at any time. There's an auto join link, and you can also just copy and paste the code in there. So yeah, really appreciate it. If you are watching, remember to smash the like button. It really helps out the channel. I'll try to answer some final questions before going off. Ayling or White? I think White will keep more clean sheets, so maybe I'd go for him. But yeah, I'd probably say Ben White. Dini or Tony? Tony, as I said. Anthony or Newcastle striker? Oh, I'm guessing you're saying Antonio Ahmed. I'd probably say Antonio, but I like Wilson too. Thank you, Ash Brown. Really appreciate it. Best of luck to you as well. Thank you, Genius Gamer. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks, lad. Again, really appreciate your help. Lots of love from Malaysia. Thank you so much. And big up Malaysia. And all the very best of luck for this season. Enjoy the football. Hopefully Arsenal win. But then again, if they don't, it is what it is. And I'll just not really stress about it too much. But thank you very much for watching. I'll try to be ramping up the content once again. And until next time, all the very best of luck.